Chapter 301. It rained heavily on Mount Dibbing. The heavy rain was mixed with the storm. The turbulent sea surface set off waves of wild wolves, howling incessantly. The flowers and plants on Mount Dibbing swayed in the wind and rain. Broken branches and flying petals flew and fell. It was a haggard and embarrassing scene. Wang Tianzong sat quietly in his hall, enjoying the wind and rain outside the window. This was a luxurious and restrained hall, as large as a bedroom. The surrounding walls were filled with dark colors, but the furnishings were extremely simple. The nearly 20-meter-high ceiling stretched the space of the hall. The whole hall looked empty and solemn, with a kind of almost frozen majesty. There was a faint light in the hall. The sky outside the hall was gloomy. The roaring rain shrouded the entire Beihai province. Wang Tianzong was motionless. His figure seemed very small in the hall, but his shadow on the ground was indescribably heavy and fierce. There was a big screen hanging in the hall. The screen was open, but there was no sound. On the silent screen, it was the duel that many people were paying attention to in the Sky Academy. But what was shown on the screen at this time was the end of the duel. It started from Xianxia jumping onto the high platform and attacking Li Baitian regardless of the rules. It was the moment when day and night alternated. The densely packed sword shadows formed a bridge that was hundreds of meters long. After the colorful brilliance, the great void sword intent suddenly formed a storm. Thousands of sword shadows frantically attacked the protection of Gu Yulan and Gu Yunxia, and finally tore the whole high platform. The picture flowed on the screen. Then it entered the second part. The sword of Emperor Path appeared without warning. In the light of the screen, only the blue giant sword was extremely clear. Wang Tianzong withdrew his gaze from the window and looked at the screen again. His eyes flickered. The violent great void sword intent on the screen seemed to be completely far away from him. His eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan appeared for a short time, but he watched it over and over again. His gaze was pensive. There was suspicion and killing intent in his eyes. The night was getting darker. Wang Tianzong turned off the screen and closed his eyes to rest. After a long time, a footstep sounded, approaching Wang Tianzong, and finally stopped behind him. "Dad!" Wang Xiangxiao's voice rang out. It was clear but light. Wang Tianzong said. He turned around and looked at Wang Xiangxiao, who was more and more energetic. He asked calmly, "How do you feel?" Wang Xiangxiao's aura became more and more restrained. Judging from his appearance, he was not a domineering person. Now, with the improvement of his realm, he became more and more indifferent and quiet, vaguely showing an unfathomable feeling. His expression was calm and confident. Only the occasional flicker in his eyes would reveal a hint of extraordinary sharpness. "I've stabilized my realm," Wang Xiangxiao said with a smile. There seemed to be an indescribable power in his words, gentle and heavy. This year, Wang Xiangxiao was about to have his 26th birthday. A 26-year-old expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm with wind and thunder veins. After the successful breakthrough, Wang Xiangxiao clearly felt his changes. That was a tremendous change in power that could be felt even in the slightest flow of blood. His eyes were firm and confident. He might not be a match for an invincible realm expert, but he could see his next path more and more clearly. Half-step invincible realm. Invincible realm. It seemed to be a long way to the end, even longer than from the beginning of martial arts to the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. But Wang Xiangxiao was confident that he could reach the end of this road within 10 years and enter the domain of the invincible realm. This confidence was rooted in his heart and could not be shaken. Wang Xiangxiao clenched his fists. It was a simple action, but the sound of wind and thunder suddenly rang in the hall. At this moment, Wang Xiangxiao really had a mentality of not fearing anything. A 26-year-old expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. A year earlier than his father. Half a year earlier than Li Kuangtu. 3 years earlier than Gu Xingyun. Wang Xiangxiao was high-spirited. Here's a video. Have a look. Wang Tianzong casually turned on the screen and chose to replay it. Li Baitian's figure fell on the screen. The violent and silent great void sword intent surged, and a long bridge appeared in the air. The long bridge instantly turned into a storm, swallowing everything. The white figure stood in the air, so vague. The great void sword intent destroyed the defense of Gu Yulan and Gu Yunxia in the most brutal way. The white figure fell to the ground. Wang Xiangxiao suddenly raised his eyebrows and said seriously, Li Tianlan? This is the video from 5 hours ago. Wang Tianzong said indifferently. Now Li Tianlan has returned to Huiting and confirmed to participate in the final maneuver of the two academies in a month. The screen was still playing. Xianxia, who was seriously injured, was helped up. A faint blue light lit up in the air. The light blocked everything. The sword of Emperor path of the Wang family of Beihai cut through the sky. When all the smoke and dust dissipated, the shadow of the sword of Emperor path disappeared, and so did Xianxia. Wang Xiangxiao narrowed his eyes tightly. He silently took the remote control and looked at it again. How is it? Wang Tianzong asked calmly. Very strong. Wang Xiangxiao's tone was calm without any fluctuation. He seriously injured Xianxia and Gu Yulan with one sword stroke. It was indeed very strong, but that was all. He could do it too. If that's all, he's no match for me. Wang Xiangxiao said in a calm tone. What if that's all? Wang Tianzong asked, plus the last sword stroke, the sword of Emperor path. Li Tianlan doesn't know the sword of Emperor path. No matter how bold Yuetong is, it's impossible to pass on our core unique skills to him. Wang Xiangxiao shook his head without hesitation. He thought for a while and continued, and even with this sword stroke he still can't. He kept replaying the video on the screen, but mainly focused on the first one. Because he was not there, Wang Xiangxiao's tone was a little uncertain. Great Void Sword Intent? It's not like it. It's more like an imitation of the Great Void Sword Intent. An imitation. His expression suddenly froze. He looked at Wang Tianzong and said softly, This is Ninth Void Infinity. What's the relationship between Li Tianlan and the deity of the purgatory of heaven capital? Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said calmly, Except for the 24 moves of sword, you can understand that they have nothing to do with each other. He looked at the screen again and said calmly, This is indeed the sword intent imitated by Ninth Void Infinity, but it's still different from the unique skills of the purgatory of heaven capital. The immortality seal, to put it bluntly, is equivalent to another direction of the 24 moves of sword. It has more changes, but in essence, it's still within the scope of the 24 moves of sword. At this stage, I can be sure that deity can't pass on his unique skills to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan has grasped Ninth Void Infinity. Do you know what this means? Wang Xiangxiao looked at the screen quietly, and his eyes were still calm. Of course, he knew what this meant. This meant that Li Tianlan had completely grasped the 24 moves of sword of the Li family, and was even familiar with the different changes of the 24 moves of sword in different directions. But that was it. Even if he grasped it, he might not be able to exert it. Everything started over. In 3 years, he had recovered to this point. Wang Xiangxiao did not deny that Li Tianlan was absolutely powerful now. But not enough. His tone was calm and even without fighting intent. In this state, he is no match for me. That style of sword of Emperor path finally killed Xianxia. Wang Tianzong rubbed his forehead and changed the topic. He had a headache and said, Even you think that Li Tianlan doesn't know sword of Emperor path. Who else can it be? And judging from the scene, Li Tianlan does have an alibi. This is a little interesting. What do you think? Wang Xiangxiao thought for a moment and asked softly. I'm not sure. Wang Tianzong said calmly. The hall fell silent. Wang Xiangxiao carefully watched the video on the screen again and then asked, When will the spectator list be sent over? Li Tianlan returned. Sword of Emperor path appeared in the Sky Academy and killed Xianxia. Kunlun City would definitely respond to this matter. Li Tianlan didn't know sword of Emperor path and had an alibi. So this matter was likely to be related to the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai must figure out what was going on as soon as possible. And the Wang family of Beihai must get the list of spectators of the Sky Academy as soon as possible. Did you sleep with Xianxia? Wang Tianzong's mind jumped very fast and he suddenly asked a completely irrelevant topic. Wang Xiangxiao didn't react at all. He looked embarrassed and stammered. Finally, he nodded with a bitter smile. This final maneuver is a little interesting. Xianxia is your woman. What's your plan? Wang Tianzong asked. Wang Xiangxiao looked into his father's eyes and whispered, I know what to do. Go ahead. Wang Tianzong leaned back in the chair again. The list is in Huiting. By the way, find out what's going on with Sword of Emperor Path. Wang Xianxia hesitated slightly. Then Yue Tong. Wang Tianzong looked at the wind and rain outside the window expressionlessly and said lightly, "Let her be." Wang Xianxia was a little confused. Li Tianlan's combat capability in the video was absolutely powerful. It would be very difficult for Song Ci to win. Naturally, he went to Huiting to help. But Yue Tong. His father said let her be. Wang Xianxiao didn't believe that his father didn't know what Yue Tong would do. So he didn't understand what Wang Tianzong meant. Wang Tianzong didn't say anything. Wang Xianxiao was silent for a while. Then he bowed deeply to Wang Tianzong and turned to walk out of the hall. Even in summer, it was extremely cold in the north of Snow Country. Near noon, the cold wind whistled in Mormon City in the north of Snow Country. The temperature was close to zero. The whole city showed a wild and delicate exotic style in the coldness. It was different from the dry and frozen north of Jianghu State, and different from the wet and cold south of Jianghu State. It was almost cruel and indifferent. Almost every day of the year, it was irresistible low temperature. Xianxia was not used to the weather in Snow Country, the scenery of the dome building, the most luxurious caviar in Mormons, and the black cloak on his body. It was cold outside. The sight in the cloak was colorless darkness. Feeling the coldness of Snow Country, Xianxia often had a feeling of losing himself in the darkness. The fireplace in the quaint hall was burning vigorously. Xianxia stood in the hall, watching the howling cold wind. He was very close to the fireplace, but his body was getting colder and colder. He subconsciously wanted to leave here. Although he had been here for less than 3 hours, Xianxia was a little annoyed. He pulled his cloak and seemed to want to take it off. This is not a good habit. A clear voice suddenly sounded behind Xianxia. Qin Weibai, who was wearing light but warm and comfortable clothes, walked into the hall. She looked at Xianxia, who was moving stiffly, and continued, "Your identity is special, especially when you are with me. No matter what the environment is, you should get used to your clothes." Xianxia was silent for a while. Then he sighed deeply and put down his hand. He turned to look at the mirror beside him. In the mirror, there was a figure wrapped in a black cloak. Xianxia could not see himself. All he could see was the cloak. Like saint and military counselor? Xianxia asked in a mocking tone, more like self-mockery. Yes, Qin Weibai said calmly. She walked to the back of the desk and sat down, casually looking through the documents piled on the desk. But you are not as important as them, at least for me. Xianxia shook his head and said subconsciously, "Who are military counselor and saint?" Military counselor and saint. The real identity of these two people was something that the whole dark world wanted to know. However, no one was able to find any clues as to who was behind the two black cloaks. Even if Xianxia joined the Samsara Palace, he didn't know who they were. He was a metaphysics grandmaster, but he couldn't predict everything. You will see them in the future. Qin Weibai looked at the documents carefully, her long eyelashes fluttering, looking focused and beautiful. But this woman, who was perfect in appearance and temperament, gave Xianxia only a feeling of horror. He subconsciously turned his head to look at the bleak Mormon city outside the window, and slowly said, "I don't know why I came here. Is this the headquarters of the Samsara Palace?" "No." Qin Weibai's voice was calm and elegant. "But this place is very close to the headquarters of the Polar Ground Alliance." The Polar Ground Alliance. The headquarters was naturally in the Polar Ground. Qin Weibai didn't know the exact location of the Polar Ground Alliance, but she knew that this place was very close to the headquarters. The Polar Ground Alliance? Xianxia was a little surprised. Qin Weibai didn't say more. She just said indifferently, "This place is very important to me, and I like the caviar here very much." Xianxia smiled bitterly and said frankly, "But I don't like it here." Xianxia didn't know why this place was important to Qin Weibai, and he didn't bother to think about it. It was too uncomfortable for him to stay here, and he just wanted to leave this damn place as soon as possible. "You won't stay here forever. Soon I'll let you leave. Jianghu State is where you should stay." Qin Weibai put down the documents in her hand and slowly said, "I just hope you don't forget your position." From her own point of view, and even from the standpoint of the entire Samsara Palace, she really didn't need Xianxia. But after the death of great master Wu Wei, Xianxuanzi's identity became sensitive and important. Even if Qin Weibai didn't need him, she didn't want others to use him. Xianxuanzi was silent for a long time, and then said flatly, "Then what do you want me to do here?" "To let you take someone away." As soon as Qin Weibai said this, there was a knock on the door outside. The mature and cool Flaming Fire walked into the hall, holding a disc in his hand. Qin Weibai frowned slightly and looked at the disc in Flaming Fire's hand with confusion in her eyes. "Boss." Tianlan appeared in Huiting a few hours ago and seriously injured Gu Yunxia and Gu Yulan with one sword move. "This is the live video," Flaming Fire said. Qin Weibai's eyes suddenly flashed with a glimmer of light, and even her breathing quickened. "I want to see him now," Qin Weibai said. Flaming Fire nodded and set up the equipment as quickly as possible. Then, the picture of the Sky Academy appeared on the screen in the hall. It still started from the end of the battle between Li Beitian and Gu Yulan. The great void sword intent formed a storm. Li Tianlan appeared. But the video was very complete, including the conversation between Li Tianlan and Zhuang Huayang. Then Li Tianlan left. The sword of Emperor Path appeared. Gu Yunxia died. Qin Weibai watched it over and over again. In 3 years, he carried the dragon vein and made great progress. Qin Weibai wasn't sure how far Li Tianlan could go, but she could feel that Li Tianlan was very strong. The video was played over and over again. Qin Weibai stared at Li Tianlan on the screen. Her eyebrows and eyes were curved, and her eyes were gentle. There was an undisguised gentle smile at the corner of her mouth. Seeing all this, Xianxuanzi only felt a little cold inside. "This is my man." Qin Weibai looked at the screen and said with a smile, "Is he handsome?" Xianxuanzi said, "Handsome," with a bitter smile. So Qin Weibai smiled more and more contented, with clear pride on her little face. In front of Xianxuanzi was a little woman who was proud of her man. But in his heart, she was a woman who was crazy enough to set foot on Mount Dibing when she was at war with the Wang family of Beihai. Even now, Xianxuanzi didn't know how Qin Weibai had climbed Mount Dibing without being noticed by Wang Tianzong. It was incredible. "He's back." Qin Weibai looked at the screen and said softly. Flaming Fire didn't say anything. Qin Weibai looked at her watch and said quietly, "Prepare the plane. I'm going to Heaven Capital." Flaming Fire answered and turned to leave. At the same time, there was a knock on the door again. A tall and plump horsewoman came in. She was followed by a little girl about 11 or 12 years old. The girl was tall and slender, with white and tender skin. She was almost stunning. She was still very young, but she was definitely a beauty. The girl stood beside horsewoman, looked at Qin Weibai, and softly called her sister. Her expression was neither sad nor happy. It was gentle and natural. She was a standard Oriental girl. Xianxuanzi suddenly exclaimed. He stared at the girl and took a step forward subconsciously. "How is it?" Qin Weibai looked at Xianxuanzi and asked. "This child." Xianxuanzi looked solemn and surprised. "What a strong luck." He had seen too many people with extraordinary achievements with luck, but the luck of the girl in front of him was almost the first one he had seen in his life. This was a karmic luck that could accomplish anything, and it could also destroy everything. "If you accidentally found this child, what would you do?" Qin Weibai asked. Xianxuanzi was stunned and subconsciously said, "Of course I would send her." Qin Weibai lowered her head and said calmly, "Do as you think. You go back to Jianghu State, send her to where she should go, and then wait for my order." "You?" Xianxuanzi hesitated. But Qin Weibai said no more. Xianxuanzi vaguely understood something. He said no more, took a deep look at Qin Weibai, and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry." He glanced at the girl. The girl came over obediently and held his palm. Xianxuanzi smiled bitterly and walked to the door with the child. "Remember, from today on, you are the 13th Supermaster of Samsara, codenamed Tianji," Qin Weibai said without raising her head as she read the documents. Xianxuanzi's body stiffened, and he turned and left in silence. Flaming Fire came over again and said softly, "Boss, the plane is ready." Qin Weibai threw away the pen in her hand, stood up and said, "Let's go." No matter how the season changed, Kunlun City seemed to be a world full of wind and snow. The cold wind rolled the snow into the mountains and rushed into the city in the mountains. The snow was flying all over the sky. In a trance, Kunlun City standing in the snow looked more and more solemn. Xianxia took off the black cloak that made him uncomfortable. He put on a clean Taoist robe again, but there was no horsetail whisk in his hand. He was holding a child in his hand. An old man and a little girl stood quietly on the hillside less than 2 kilometers away from Kunlun City. The beautiful little girl was wearing thin clothes, shivering in the wind and snow. Her little face was pale, and she looked more delicate and pitiful. Xianxia, who was wearing a thin Taoist robe, stood still and looked at the city tower in the distance. His eyes were deep, as if he wanted to see through the world in the city. He wanted to go to the city, but he had never entered it for decades. He was 2 kilometers away from Kunlun City. This was the closest he had been to Kunlun City in decades. A black spot appeared outside Kunlun City. The black spot moved straight out of the door at an extremely fast speed. When Xianxia was in a trance, the black spot had become bigger in his sight and finally appeared in front of him. Gu Xingyun, who was dressed in black and looked like a scholar, looked at Xianxia and frowned slightly. "You shouldn't have come. I had to." Xianxuanzi's tone was indifferent. "What's the matter?" Gu Xingyun raised his eyebrows. His expression was calm, but there was impatience deep in his eyes. Before joining the Samsara Palace, Xianxuanzi was indeed a member of Kunlun City. Very few people know about this. But even fewer people knew that the relationship between the two was definitely not harmonious. "Go to the city." Xianxuanzi looked at the city in front of him with a calm face. "In your dreams." Gu Xingyun sneered, and his eyes finally fell on the girl beside Xianxuanzi. A strange look flashed in his eyes. "This is the child I found in Beihai province by accident." Xianxuanzi said expressionlessly, "She has the strongest luck I've ever seen in my life. In less than 10 years, she can control Phoenix Pavilion. I brought her here today, so I have to go to the city." He looked into Gu Xingyun's eyes without any concession. Gu Xingyun looked at the girl in front of him in silence. His eyes were getting brighter and brighter. Xianxuanzi looked at Gu Xingyun coldly. After a long time, Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and shook his head. "Not today. I have an appointment with Wang Tianzong. You can't go to the city." Xianxuanzi raised his eyebrows and suddenly said, "For Li Tianlan. He must die." A trace of killing intent suddenly flashed on Gu Xingyun's elegant face. Xianxuanzi was silent. "This child is good." Gu Xingyun softened his tone. "But it depends on whether she can control Phoenix Pavilion. I'll take her to the city first. How about the Mid-Autumn Festival? Wait for me here on the Mid-Autumn Festival, and I'll take you in?" Xianxuanzi hesitated. He was silent for a while, and finally let go of the girl's little hand. Gu Xingyun smiled, pulled the girl over calmly, and said softly, "What's your name?" "Flowery." The girl lowered her head and her voice was soft. It was a very old-fashioned name. Gu Xingyun narrowed his eyes and looked at Xianxuanzi subconsciously. Xianxuanzi seemed to know what he wanted to ask, and he nodded solemnly. For decades, he had only brought 2 girls here. The girl in front of him was the second one. Gu Xingyun seemed to be slightly relieved, but there was still doubt deep in his eyes. He was silent for a while, looked at the girl in front of him, and said softly, "From today on, your surname is Gu." He paused for a moment. Deep in his mind, a long-lost name and a woman came to his mind. Gu Xingyun was in a trance, and his eyes were in a trance. The girl's shivering body because of the cold made him come to his senses. Chapter 302. The early summer morning was the most beautiful. The morning sun dispelled the night, and the cool wind blew the treetops. The sunlight passed through the shaking branches and formed floating shadows on the ground. Everything in sight was clear and beautiful. Pearly summer. Pit was the clearest season in the world. Li Tianlan stood by the window of the ward and looked into the distance, thinking silently. Li Beitian, whose upper body was almost covered with bandages, leaned on the bed and looked at him calmly. The sunlight shone in through the window and fell on Li Tianlan with layers of halos. Li Tianlan, who was motionless, seemed to melt in the sunlight and become dust floating in the light beam, so illusory that he did not exist at all. There was a knock on the door outside. Pit was gentle and careful. Li Tianlan moved his body and looked at Li Beitian. Pining Qianqing and Su Chu were both pushed out for a walk by the nurse, and there were only the two of them in the ward. Li Beitian shrugged, but when he moved his upper body covered with bandages, he immediately grimaced in pain. He took a deep breath, looked at Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, "You're really popular." The knock on the door was still going, neither too fast nor too slow. Li Tianlan shook his head. "Unfortunately, it's meaningless." He walked out of the ward, came to the living room, and opened the door. There was a very young woman standing outside the door. The woman was very beautiful, but it was the kind of gorgeous beauty that relied on makeup. She wore a short skirt that could barely cover her buttocks and a tight red suspender top, which showed her figure to the greatest extent. Strong fragrance came to his face. Li Tianlan's expression did not change, but his nose twitched subconsciously. The woman wore too much perfume, and it was even a little pungent. "Your Highness, I'm Tong Yu. I'm the class representative of the sniper lesson of Class 2. The woman said softly, her eyes sparkling and obedient. She called him Your Highness. This title was a little exaggerated, but it was not groundless. Although Li Tianlan had disappeared for 3 years, his battle in Heaven Capital did not fade in the slightest. Even if he had lost his original combat strength, he still ranked 9th on the divine list and was still the number 1 among the young generation in Jianghu state. This was actually not a good thing, but such an identity was enough for him to be called Your Highness. Hello. Li Tianlan nodded with a smile and motioned for Tong Yu to come in. He was the class representative of Class 2's sniper class. This kind of identity was actually very rare. There were dozens of classes in the Sky Academy. The class that belonged only to Zhuanghuayang was Class 1, which was also the most elite class. The class guide of Class 2 was the Enchantress, an expert from the Wang family of Beihai. She was second only to the other half. Tong Yu was the class representative for Class 2's sniping class, which meant that her sniping scores were the best in Class 2. Li Tianlan let her in and even poured a glass of water for her. He did not close the door of the ward. Therefore, Li Beitian could also hear the conversation between the two. Tong Yu spoke respectfully and obediently. Li Beitian listened quietly, but his eyes became more and more indifferent. The conversation was very short, less than 10 minutes. Tong Yu said goodbye. Li Tianlan walked into the ward again. Is it the 5th group? Li Beitian asked. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. No one said anything? Li Beitian frowned. This shows that they are all very smart. Who is willing to say anything before seeing the final result? Li Tianlan smiled and walked to the window again, looking at the world outside. Fi's eyes were calm and tranquil, but his gaze was so focused that it was almost gazing. Only those who had stayed for a long time in the world of ice and snow that was eternally unchanging in the polar region would know how colorful and varied the world of the 4 seasons were. Li Beitian shook his head with a sneer. Stupid. If there is a clear result, will we still care about them? Li Tianlan was silent and did not speak. Li Tianlan had stayed in the Sky Academy for 2 days. 2 days, Kunlun City had made it clear that it asked the Sky Academy to find out the murderer of Xianxia. Li Tianlan was the biggest suspect. But now, he had become the least suspicious person. The surveillance video of the hospital had been sent to the headmaster's office. All the departments of the academy had investigated. There was nothing wrong with the surveillance video. When Sword of Emperor Path killed Xianxia, Li Tianlan was indeed chatting with Qin Ku in the hospital. Although the hospital was close to the training ground, it was still nearly 2 kilometers away. This distance was enough to prove that everything had nothing to do with Li Tianlan. But Kunlun City continued to put pressure on Zhuanghuayang. It was said that Gu Xingyun also invited Wang Tianzong to Kunlun City. Gu Yulan, the leader of Jilei Peak, one of the 4 forces of the young generation, was still alive, but she was seriously injured. It was said that she was likely to withdraw from the final maneuver of the 2 academies. Gu Xingyun and Wang Tianzong were said to be discussing the establishment of a regional special warfare headquarters throughout Jianghu state. The high-level meeting of Jianghu state would be held at the beginning of the month in a few days. With Li Tianlan's appearance, there were changes in all aspects of Jianghu state. This change was very small, and it was only a possibility at present. but a large number of rumors were enough to cover the future of Li Tianlan and East Emperor Palace with a layer of gray. But Li Tianlan was still the young governor of Sai City. It was said that he had a close relationship with the Dongqing clan. With Li Tianlan's return, the future of East Emperor Palace was difficult, but at least it was not hopeless. So in the past few days, many students of the Sky Academy came to visit Li Tianlan. Their attitude was also very respectful. But no one was willing to join East Emperor Palace. Everyone was waiting for the result. They might be waiting for the action of Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai. Might also be the result of the final maneuver. Might also be the result of Sai City and the Dongqing clan joining forces to play with Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai. Before seeing this, no one would join East Emperor Palace rashly. Their visit was nothing more than an attempt to get closer to Li Tianlan. What do you think they are waiting for? Li Baitian suddenly asked. The final maneuver. Li Tianlan's tone was calm. In their hearts, this should be the clearest signal. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai would definitely take action. Sai City and the Dongqing clan would definitely react. The game was inevitable. In terms of strength, it was also clear who was superior. But it was destined to be a long process, so long that there were too many variables. In the eyes of truly ambitious people, a long time was enough for them to make some decisions that seemed unwise for the time being. The students who could enter the Sky Academy might be cautious, but at least they would not lack courage. But they had to see enough prospects before they decided whether to take a gamble or not. Li Tianlan's return was a signal. But it was obvious that he seriously injured Xianxia with one sword move. Even if he was credited with the Sword of Emperor Path, his current performance was still not convincing. No matter what the mentality of those who wanted to join East Emperor Palace was, at least they would think that East Emperor Palace could give them a future that Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai could not. They believed in Li Tianlan, but not completely. Especially when East Emperor Palace's strength was greatly damaged, and most of its main forces were seriously injured, they needed Li Tianlan to do something. Phantom Shadow. 3000 World. Countless young experts were about to gather in the final maneuver. But Li Tianlan was alone now. If he could be strong enough to defeat Phantom Shadow and 3000 World alone and stand at the peak of the final maneuver, no one would doubt the future of East Emperor Palace, and more people would join East Emperor Palace. The people who came to visit Li Tianlan in recent days just wanted to get closer to Li Tianlan in advance. If he failed in the final maneuver, there would be no need to say anything. But if he stood at the end and graduated first in credits, then these people would make a clear statement. If I win the final maneuver, East Emperor Palace will have a real start. Li Tianlan said. He did not say what would happen if he lost. He would not lose. This was his unshakable confidence. Can I win? Li Baitian was silent for a long time before he asked in a low voice. Compared with Jianghu, who had always been very low-key, Li Baitian had personally seen the power of Xianxia during the mission. She was a gorgeous woman who was almost flamboyant. That kind of power was completely unreasonable in Li Baitian's view. Li Tianlan seriously injured Gu Yulan and Gu Yunxia with one sword move. But Xianxia might be able to do it. So he actually understood why the students who came to visit Li Tianlan were reluctant to make a statement. There was one more thing that Li Baitian didn't want to admit, but he had to. Because the mission system of the two academies was shared, East Emperor Palace had encountered Phantom Shadow 3 times during field missions. There was no major conflict between the two sides outside the country. However, every time they competed, Hidden Shadow would always come out on top. But now /Pit was difficult for him, Su Chu, and Ning Qianqing to recover before the final maneuver. What about the final maneuver? /P don't worry. Li Tianlan laughed. We will win. East Emperor Palace might encounter countless difficulties and suppressions in the future. But only by winning the final maneuver could East Emperor Palace be qualified to face those. That was his first step in Jianghu state. It was his. I don't know how strong Jianghu is. But don't underestimate Song Ci. Li Baitian cautiously reminded, there's something wrong with that woman. Li Tianlan frowned. When he was about to say something, a clear beep suddenly sounded. The wristwatch on Li Baitian's hand, which was used to calculate the score, began to vibrate. The list of the first batch of students from the Deep Sea Academy to Huating has been confirmed. Li Beitian whispered. Li Tianlan remained calm and collected. The students from the Deep Sea Academy would be divided into 10 batches and arrive at the Sky Academy one after another in a week. The first batch was undoubtedly the most elite. Since the list of the first batch had been transmitted to the students' communicators, it meant that they had now arrived at the Sky Academy. Xianxia must be among them. Li Tianlan was a little curious. Li Beitian looked down at the list. The first 3 forces were on the list. 3000 World. Shadow. Blizzard. Then there was the specific list of the 3 forces. The screen on the wristwatch was very small. The list scrolled very slowly. Li Beitian looked at it quietly. The first force to appear was Shadow. Songxi's name was at the top. Then, a few unfamiliar names began to roll in the Shadow organization. Until the last line. Li Beitian's face changed dramatically in an instant. He subconsciously moved his body, and the gauze wrapped around his upper body was immediately stained with blood. But Li Beitian didn't notice it. Phi's face became completely gloomy. The name on the last line of the list of Shadow continued to roll up. An incomparably glaring name occupied his entire vision. That was the last name on the list of Shadow. Wang Xiao. The list was still sliding. After Shadow, it was 3000 World. That was the organization established by Jianghu. Li Beitian looked at the list quietly and suddenly felt powerless. This time, he didn't need to look at the last name on the list. Because Jianghu, the founder of 3000 World, was already ranked second. Before him there was also a name. Gu Hanshan. Li Beitian suddenly raised his head. The sunshine outside the window quietly sprinkled into the ward. It was a quiet void. Li Tianlan's figure had disappeared from the ward. P. There are 2 chapters today, and one is before 7 p.m. P. Chapter 303. Second Update. When the first batch of elites from the Deep Sea Academy officially entered the Sky Academy in a luxury bus, the list of the first batch of elites had already spread throughout Jianghu State. The maneuver between the 2 academies was a big deal in the first place. Not to mention the final maneuver, even the first 2 maneuvers would have at least 1 director of the decision-making committee and 1 counselor of the decision-making committee on the spot. In addition, some bigwigs of the special warfare system of Jianghu State and masters of folk martial arts forces would also be invited. The total number of students in the 2 academies was less than 5,000, but a considerable number of graduates would become the backbone of the special warfare system of Jianghu State in the coming years, and the best students would even become influential figures. This could be said to be a maneuver, but in fact, it was fresh blood flowing into the military and special warfare system of Jianghu State. No one would ignore this kind of thing. What's more, this was an extremely special batch. This year, there were several young experts whose combat capability was enough to catch up with the older generation before graduation. They were also involved in a lot of historical grievances. The Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, Sai City, Dongqing Clan, Mount Shu, academics, Prince Group, Li family, 3 years. The various forces had long been entangled with each other without making a sound. Each of them was powerful enough to influence the overall situation of Jianghu State, or at least the local situation. The final maneuver of the 2 academies seemed to be a fight between a group of young people, but everyone knew that whether the major forces were at peace or at war, whether they were playing or compromising, advancing or retreating, up or down, everything would have a clear signal after the final maneuver. No one believed that there would be no accidents in this final maneuver. But no one expected the accident to happen before the acting began. Li Tianlan, who disappeared for 3 years, returned to the Sky Academy. Wang Xiao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, joined Phantom. Gu Hanshan, the heir of Kunlun City, took over the 3000 World. The list was passed on at the fastest speed in Jianghu State. The list was short, and only 2 names had been added. However, everyone who saw the list felt their hearts pounding. Li Tianlan, Wang Xiao, Gu Hanshan. Compared to these 3 names, even the names of Songxi and Jianghu were much dimmer. The 3 of them represented too many grievances. It was not that no one had imagined the scene where the three of them coexisted in Jianghu state, but a fantasy was a fantasy after all. This was a well-prepared encounter. Wang Shengxiao had Song Si and Phantom with him. Gu Hanzhan had Jiang Shangyu and the 3000 world by his side. Li Tianlan. Right now, he seemed to only have himself. This was not actually a violation of the rules. At the very least, it did not cross the bottom line of the rules. Both the Shadow Sect and the 3000 realms belonged to the two academies. However, they were still under the name of the other two powerful departments. Using the names of these two departments to recommend outstanding students to the two academies was possible at any time, and it was difficult for the two academies to refuse. Moreover, Chen Songlin, the dean of the Deep Sea Academy, was one of the backbone forces of the Special Warfare Group, so he would not refuse. The admission procedures could be completed in minutes. The most important thing was that both Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanzhan were very young. It was not bad for young masters to join young forces. In theory, if the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City wanted to stop Li Tianlan, it was possible to put a few half-step invincible realm experts into the two superpowers. However, it was clear that they were not that shameless. Li Tianlan received a call from Li Beitian immediately. He didn't say much. After hearing the news, he quietly hung up the phone. Wang Shengxiao. Gu Hanzhan. This was a standard way of using one's power to suppress others. Li Tianlan could not replicate such a practice. Although the East Emperor Palace was separated from the Thunder, it was still under the leadership of the Huiting Special Operations Bureau and the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters. Even if he could find a master and persuade Zhuang Huayang, the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters would not agree. So he could only rely on himself. The list spread rapidly in Jianghu state. In the sensation, everyone was looking forward to the strongest competition among the young generation of Jianghu state. Compared with the final battle of Heaven Capital, this was the most direct competition among the young heavenly sons of Jianghu state. Tit for tat, fire and water. The first group of elites from the Deep Sea Academy was received by Zhao Hefei, the director of the logistics department of the Sky Academy. As a confidant promoted by Gu Yunxia's death obviously had a strong impact on Zhao Hefei. However, he still forced himself to carry out his task. His task was very simple: to lead the elites of the Deep Sea Academy to visit the Sky Academy. The final maneuver was different from the maneuvers of the previous 2 years. The previous annual maneuver was a stage to show individual strength. The two academies also chose a small number of the most elite students. There were less than 200 people, and all of them were fighting one-on-one. The final maneuver was countless times more complicated. This was a maneuver for all students, involving most of the disciplines of the two academies, as well as teamwork. It was complicated and detailed. Countless areas of the entire Sky Academy would become the maneuver area. The first batch of the most elite students arrived at the Sky Academy a month in advance to familiarize themselves with the terrain. Zhao Hefei took the first batch of 50 students of the Deep Sea Academy to walk and stop in the academy to watch the various venues of the maneuver. Tactical staff, teamwork, and stealth camouflage were integrated. The venue of the maneuver was a simulated mountain forest in the west of the Sky Academy, as well as an abandoned warehouse and teaching building. Firearms control and sniping courses were combined in the shooting range in the east of the Sky Academy. Assassination, reconnaissance, and defense courses were combined. The venue of the maneuver was the entire Sky Academy. Kunlun City would temporarily issue tasks. The maneuver of electronic intrusion was in the number 1 teaching building. In addition, there was a mechanical control field, which was a demonstration maneuver without confrontation. Intelligence collection and analysis also did not need confrontation. In the number 2 teaching building, the cruelest one-on-one combat was in the training ground in the north of the academy. Zhao Hefei took the students of the Deep Sea Academy to walk and stop, explaining along the way. His strength was not strong, but the cultivation of the fire-flaming realm was enough to make him energetic all the time. The morning sun was gradually rising and turning into a scorching sun. Zhao Hefei walked on the path of the Sky Academy with a group of students, most of whom were stronger than him. He pointed ahead casually and said softly, "That is the training ground of the Sky Academy, the place of actual combat in the ultimate maneuver. You are all familiar with this place, so you don't have to go there." He wiped the tiny beads of sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "Well, there is a good restaurant nearby. Let's go to eat first and arrange free activities for you in the afternoon. How about that? Let's go and have a look. A somewhat hoarse but extremely sexy female voice sounded. Zhao Hufei, who had already turned around, turned his head in astonishment. It was the woman closest to him who spoke. She walked quietly in front of all the students, alone. The only one who was qualified to walk side by side with her, Jianghu, was not here. So she justifiably became the only leader of the first batch of students of the Deep Sea Academy. All the students intentionally or unintentionally kept a short distance behind her. The woman stood in front, a little lonely and a little indifferent. She was a woman with a strange charm all over her body. Her beauty was almost ostentatious, so it became a kind of gorgeous that people did not dare to look directly at her. Gorgeous, but not charming. On the contrary, everyone could only sense loneliness and indifference from her. It was a kind of indifference that seemed to take nothing in mind. It was not indifference. Indifference was also an emotion. But it was pure indifference, without any emotion. The woman's skin was a little dark, but it did not destroy her beauty. Instead, it made her look a little wild. Silent and wild. Gorgeous and indifferent. A complicated woman. A complicated temperament. Zhao Hufei glanced at her, then subconsciously turned his head away. He was a little afraid of this woman. Just like when the students of the Deep Sea Academy faced her. He actually did not want to take these people to the training ground. The #1 platform that was destroyed by his sword was still being rebuilt. Zhao Hufei felt that it was very shameful. He was the director of the logistics department. Naturally, he was responsible for building some facilities on the training ground. But he could not refuse. The woman in front of him said she wanted to have a look, so he had to go and have a look. There was no other reason. Just because she was Xianxia. It's good to have a look. Zhao Hufei smiled a little unnaturally and led the way into the training ground. In recent years, the training ground had been rebuilt. The area of the high platform had been expanded to a radius of 100 meters and a height of nearly 6 meters. It looked broad and majestic. The stone platform did not seem to change, but the inside had been replaced with a large number of alloys, which were absolutely solid. This was the place where the elites of the two academies fought one-on-one. In the ultimate maneuver, all 16 platforms would be activated and soaked with the blood of the elites of the two academies. Zhao Hufei took Xianxia and others to number 16 platform. They walked past from the end one by one. Xianxia stared at the tall and solid platform with empty and emotionless eyes. Her eyes gradually fluctuated, and the emptiness gradually disappeared. There was a sharp and confident edge in her eyes. This was the eyes of a conqueror, confident, domineering, and disdainful of everything. Here in the Sky Academy, everyone was the object of her conquest. Go to #1 platform. Xianxia said indifferently, and her tone was almost like an order. Zhao Hufei, on the other hand, did not feel any discomfort. He was just a little embarrassed as he led the crowd to stage 1. #1 platform was still in ruins. The alloy customized by the Sky Academy would be delivered in 2 days. What Xianxia wanted to see most was this ruin. She had seen the video of Li Tianlan's attack, but it was not as clear as standing here. Even if there was no sword intent here. Xianxia slowly walked up the ruins of the platform. The students behind her followed in silence. The sword intent on the platform had long disappeared, but some of the sword marks left by the sword energy were still there, intact. Xianxia carefully observed the countless sword marks engraved on the ruins, but she was thinking about the video she had seen. Her eyes gradually became serious, but she was still confident. She slowly closed her eyes and moved forward by instinct. She wanted to stand in the most reasonable position and imagine the specific power of Li Tianlan's sword. There was a low cry from behind. Xianxia opened her eyes, and her pupils suddenly contracted. There was a man standing in front of her. The man's appearance was ordinary, and he could be said to be handsome at most. He was dressed in white and stepped barefoot on the alloy destroyed by the sword intent and scalding by the sun. He was so quiet that it was almost illusory. Xiangxi's heart suddenly jumped. She didn't know how long he had been standing here. She also didn't know when he appeared. Before seeing him, no one even noticed his existence. Li Tianlan. Xianxia took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. At this moment, She subconsciously wanted to step back, but she stopped. Li Tianlan stood silently in front of Xianxia, and his whole person seemed to be completely integrated with the ruins. In Xi's perception, there were only ruins, and Li Tianlan was almost completely illusory. Illusory was the unknown. Xianxia didn't even feel danger or threat. But Li Tianlan felt the strength of the woman in front of him. He easily determined the other party's identity. Xianxia? Li Tianlan asked. His eyes were calm and patient, like a hunter who had waited for his prey. Yes. Xi's tone was indifferent. That's right. Li Tianlan seemed to smile. He said, "Oh." He took a step. No hesitation, no nonsense. The violent sword intent suddenly rose the moment his foot landed on the ground. The sword intent squeezed every space, making an explosive sound. A huge and heavy piece of alloy suddenly soared into the air in the sword energy, and directly smashed toward Xianxia. The wild sword energy broke out in an instant without warning. The alloy, like a door, blocked the scorching sun and brought up a fierce wind. Chapter 304. No one could have thought that Li Tianlan would be so straightforward. Xianxia was very clear about her position. She had seriously injured Su Chu and Ning Qianqing, and suppressed the East Emperor Palace in the previous two maneuvers. She knew that she and Li Tianlan would not become friends. But she also did not expect that Li Tianlan would make a move. As soon as he confirmed her identity, the frenzied sword intent had already come from the sky. The huge alloy that blocked out the sunlight was flying in the air. The sunlight became dim. Li Tianlan took a step, and his whole person suddenly changed dramatically. It was an indescribable feeling. Before one step it was the real world. Li Tianlan was illusory. He was standing there, but he was as illusory as dust. After one step it was the illusory world. The high platform, the ruins, the trees in the distance, the crowd around, the hot light, everything became blurred in the sword intent. Only Li Tianlan became extremely real. The world seemed to be very small. It was so small that it seemed to be squeezed in by Li Tianlan. In Xi's eyes, there was only Li Tianlan's figure that was so real and pure that it had no temperament. This kind of change was too intense. It was like magma suddenly erupting from a dormant volcano, or like violent waves instantly rolling up on the surface of a calm sea. In that instant, the surging gave everyone a sense of danger that assaulted them head-on. Xianxia finally took a step back. Her palms glowed with light. A quaint and dark handle slipped from her sleeve to her hand, and the light was dark and deep. The alloy steel plate that was lifted by Li Tianlan fell down with unparalleled heavy momentum. The sword energy filled the surroundings, and the undisguised killing intent seemed to completely tear Xianxia apart. Xi's arms were completely stretched. The dark handle in her hand lit up with sharp and dazzling light in an instant. A slender long saber directly came out of the handle in her hand. The blade was gloomy and obscure, straight as a sword. Only the tip of the blade was slightly raised, forming a small but perfect arc. The slender blade was nearly 2 meters when fully stretched out. At this time, it was held in Xi's hand, and it was indescribably sharp. This was a long saber that was a little famous even in the dark world in recent years. The name of the saber was Night Curtain. The huge alloy roared. Xianxia held Night Curtain in her hand tightly and raised the saber. The long and narrow blade swept past with an ear-piercing whistle. Amidst the sound of metal colliding, the alloy steel plate that was nearly 5 meters long was suddenly torn into countless pieces by the saber light. Alloy shards flew everywhere. Xianxia held the curtain of night expressionlessly. The sword intent raged around her, and her eyes were already empty and dead. It was not until this time that Zhao Hefei, the director of the logistics department of the Sky Academy, reacted. "What are you doing? The drill hasn't started yet." Zhao Hefei subconsciously roared, "All of you, scram." Li Tianlan interrupted Zhao Hefei directly. Zhao Hefei was stunned. His face suddenly turned red, and even a little purple. Li Tianlan glanced at him, and then his eyes fell on Xianxia. It was a very calm look. However, Zhao Hefei, who was filled with anger, felt as if someone had splashed a bucket of cold water on him. The flames burning in his chest were immediately extinguished and turned into ice. He was still angry. However, he couldn't vent his anger at all. His anger was completely suppressed by his instinctive fear. His mouth moved, and he actually took a few steps to the side. Only then did he notice the change in Li Tianlan. The change from illusion to reality was violent and abrupt. At this moment, Li Tianlan stood there. His figure was very small, but his will seemed to fill the entire training ground. Zhao Hufei couldn't even find a place to stand. The elites of the Sky Academy subconsciously surrounded him. Li Tianlan was directly shrouded by countless cold eyes. Step back. Song Xiai suddenly spoke. Everyone was slightly stunned. Although they didn't step back, they didn't continue to move forward. Among them, there were not only the elites of Phantom. Even the elites of the 3000 World and the Blizzard Organization were included. Song Xi's prestige in the Deep Sea Academy was evident. You took the initiative to attack. Song Xiai clenched the slender and dark curtain of night in her hand and took a step forward. Her appearance was gorgeous and flamboyant, but her lifeless eyes were filled with a strong sense of danger and sharpness. Li Tianlan frowned imperceptibly. He didn't like this woman. It was not only because she seriously injured Su Chu and Ning Chencheng. It was almost an instinctive rejection. Song Xiai gave him a weird feeling. Although the tentative blow just now didn't produce any results, it was enough for her to judge a lot of things. The saber in Song Xi's hand was neither good nor bad. That saber was very strong, but Li Tianlan was sure that the other party didn't have a special constitution. She didn't have a single wind vein or thunder vein, let alone wind and thunder veins. Most importantly, he was now completely convinced that this woman's willpower was average. It didn't mean that she wasn't strong-willed. Willpower included many things. One of them was perception. The perception of danger, the general judgment of the enemy. These were all perceptions. Song Xi's perception was so bad that it was completely beyond Li Tianlan's expectation. But her mind was extremely firm. Not sharp enough but firm enough willpower. All these combined made Song Xiai look extremely stiff. This was what made people feel most uncomfortable about her. Li Tianlan didn't know how many people could perceive Song Xi's flaws. But he could see it. Jianghu, who had always hidden his heavenly king heart, could also see it. In fact, his willpower was perfect. This meant that there were too many possibilities. Li Tianlan thought silently, but his expression was still as calm as water. So what if I make the first move? Anyone who offends me will pay the price. Song Xiai raised the curtain of night in her hand. The curtain of night was really as gloomy as the night. Even under the scorching sun, the slender blade was still dark and obscure. The blade of the curtain of night pointed at Li Tianlan, and Song Xi's aura suddenly began to rise wildly. Li Tianlan smiled. The only purpose of his coming here today was to find Song Xiai. Song Xiai sent Su Chu and Ning Chencheng out of the final maneuver. He had to send Song Xiai out of the final maneuver. Li Tianlan didn't mind paying the price, but the premise was that the other party had to have the ability to do so. His figure gradually became blurred under the scorching sun. The world was still illusory. Li Tianlan's figure merged into the air like flowing water and completely became nothingness. Song Xiai frowned her beautiful eyebrows tightly. She didn't think that Li Tianlan was much stronger than her, but Li Tianlan's strange and erratic maneuverability was her most hated opponent. Song Xi's eyes became more and more lifeless. But the killing intent in her dark pupils was getting stronger and stronger. The scorching wind blew under the scorching sun. There was a subtle sword energy in the wind. Song Xiai turned around abruptly along the sword energy. Li Tianlan had already appeared on the number 2 platform hundreds of meters away. He was so clear and real. He was so real that people would subconsciously ignore everything around him. Li Tianlan looked at Song Xiai. His voice directly covered the area of hundreds of meters around, grand like thunder. Come here. Li Tianlan's voice was indifferent and casual. 2 simple words, but they were completely filled with careless contempt. This was a very strange tone for Song Xiai. She didn't feel angry, but laughed. She was extremely beautiful, and when she laughed, she was so gorgeous that people couldn't even look at her directly. Here it comes. Song Xiai said. The curtain of night shifted its direction and pointed directly at Li Tianlan. The blazing sunlight became distorted in a state visible to the naked eye along with the offset blade. A large area of space shook layer by layer with Song Xiai as the center. The air spread like waves. The undulating space enveloped the number 1 platform and kept spreading. The space didn't surge fast, but it slapped outward layer by layer, and when it came to Li Tianlan, it had become a violent roaring tide. The distorted space hit everything with a surging roar, as if it was going to collapse the whole world. Xianxia clenched the long saber in her hand. In the extreme silence, there was suddenly a sharp and high-pitched scream that was enough to pierce gold and crack stones on the number 1 platform. Far away, the blade of the curtain of night suddenly stabbed forward. Thunder and lightning burst out, covering the sky and the sun. This stab didn't seem to use much strength, but Xiangxi's whole body seemed to be carried up by this stab and rushed directly to Li Tianlan. The wind rose. The clouds surged. The whole training ground completely turned into a world of thunder and lightning. Endless thunder shook the whole Sky Academy. One after another, thunder and lightning exploded on the ground. Smoke and dust rose and turned into fog. In the thick fog and thunder, the dark edge of the curtain of night appeared in front of Li Tianlan in a flash, like lightning, with the extremely condensed killing intent. Li Tianlan neither advanced nor retreated. In the face of the saber light piercing his head, he just raised his arm. He wore a silver bracelet on his wrist. The silver bracelet was quiet and flowing with light. Li Tianlan opened his 5 fingers, and the space on the number 2 platform seemed to be completely frozen for a moment. There was no frost, lightning or fire, only the fiercest compression and contraction of space. The whole space seemed to form a wall. The airwaves driven by Xianxia whistled and hit the wall. The tip of the curtain of night stabbed directly with the surging waves. The space seemed to be completely still. All the sounds disappeared completely. The world was quiet. Li Tianlan stood motionless on the high platform. Xianxia was in the air, keeping the posture of stabbing forward. The saber and sword had been infinitely close to Li Tianlan's palm. It only needed a few centimeters to penetrate Li Tianlan's palm. But a few centimeters was like a mote. At this moment of almost stillness, the tip of the saber that was about to pierce Li Tianlan's palm couldn't move an inch. The rich blue thunder spread over silently. Xianxia held the saber with both hands. Her body was completely tense, and she stabbed forward with all her might. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. He closed his open palm for a moment. He opened it again. In the blink of an eye, the sword energy soared into the sky. The space, which seemed to be still, shattered in the most violent way in an instant. On the number 2 platform, all the air around Li Tianlan was torn into the shape of a long sword by the sword intent. Countless illusory and extremely dangerous sword shadows kept rushing up to the sky and falling quickly. Li Tianlan was surrounded by sword shadows. Dozens of swords, hundreds of swords, and hundreds of swords. The sword intent was boiling like water. Countless sword shadows completely wrapped Li Tianlan in it. The sword shadows turned into a curtain. A large sword curtain flew and rose around Li Tianlan. The sword shadows were not for defense. At the same time, they were moving forward layer by layer, attacking Xianxia in front of them endlessly. The ripples like huge waves were all chopped up by the sword shadows. The thunder was dissipating. Only the dark edge was still trying its best to ring out. Xiangxi's dead and empty eyes were getting brighter and brighter, and her pupils were getting darker and darker. In the state of battle, she was with an indescribable madness. The dense sword curtain rotated around Li Tianlan like a flower blooming. A large number of sword shadows fell on Xianxia, bringing out flames one after another on her body. Blood fell on Xiangxi's body. The night curtain still couldn't move forward. The sword intent around Li Tianlan was getting stronger and stronger. His figure became more and more real. The sword intent began to change constantly. The great void sword intent of Mount Shu. The sword intent of Jifeng Sword Training School. The sword intent of Jade Pool. The sword intent kept flowing. The simulated sword intent was all specious, but the complex and changeable sword intent made the sword curtain around Li Tianlan grow larger and larger. The thunder around Xianxia was almost annihilated. The sword curtain around Li Tianlan had spread to a scale of hundreds of meters. Huge, complex, solemn, covering the sky and the sun. The sword energy soared into the sky. Xiangxi's dark pupils quietly expanded, almost occupying the whole white of her eyes. The slender night curtain shook violently. Amidst the huge sword screen, Xiangxia soared into the sky in an instant. The chaotic and orderly sword curtain rushed to Xianxia at the same time. Thousands of swords gathered into a bundle. The sword curtain was like a dragon, mighty and mighty. Xianxia's body was still rising. The next second, the dark saber light suddenly lit up high in the sky. The saber light was like a waterfall. The dark edge spread over the whole sky. The saber light spread and closed. Xianxia's essence, qi, and spirit directly climbed to the limit in the shortest time. The dark saber light turned into countless dark lines. The huge sword curtain disappeared in pieces in the saber light. More and more dark lines chased down. Like a frenzied rain. Outbreak. Outbreak regardless of the consequences. This was the essence of martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai. Now, it was vividly displayed by Xianxia. Xianxia might not be the strongest of the young generation, but she was definitely the most dangerous person. The combination of instant outbreak and continuous outbreak was the balance of martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai. But Xianxia obviously went to the extreme in the instant outbreak. This meant that she could directly release all her physical strength and unique skills in the shortest time in the most thorough way. Regardless of the consequences. Only the most thorough outbreak. An instant was eternity. The dark saber light covered the sky from top to bottom. Unparalleled. Killing. Destruction. Tearing. Dragon slaying. In the case of absolute concentration of essence, qi and spirit, all the combat power of Wuxia burst out in the blink of an eye. All the unique skills turned into saber light full of killing intent in the slight tremble of the blade in the night. The blade of the night went straight down. The wantonly blossoming blade light destroyed the sword curtain almost like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Xianxia's killing intent directly broke through the commanding heights. Under absolute concentration, she vaguely showed signs of a breakthrough. Li Tianlan still did not move. He let the sword curtain be shattered by the impact. He let the black saber light fall straight down. Xianxia's figure went straight down in the air, wild and decisive. Li Tianlan watched quietly, his eyes calm. The completely crazy dark saber light tore the completely scattered sword curtain all the way down. It was getting closer and closer. 30 meters. 20 meters. 10 meters. The saber light swept across, bringing up a gale. Li Tianlan's white clothes were completely blown backward in the gale. Xianxia could even clearly feel the chill from the white clothes made of cloud silk. 5 meters. Li Tianlan stretched out his hand again. It was still a snap of fingers. But this time, as Li Tianlan flicked his fingers, his palm suddenly formed a weird and complicated emblematic gesture. In an instant, the dark saber light with endless crazy killing intent suddenly stagnated. Xianxia, whose face changed dramatically, had no time to stop. The downward saber light was about to cover Li Tianlan's body. But the saber light went up directly against the air when his emblematic gesture changed. The distance between the two sides was too close. Xianxia's saber had been completely out of control. Countless saber lights almost completely covered her body in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan looked calm. He didn't know how many people would recognize this move. But it didn't matter. There were other names for this move in the dark world. But in his view, this was the 24 moves of sword. A soft but flashing thunder light with texture completely enveloped Xianxia at the moment when the saber light fell on her body. The thunder light appeared without warning. But the moment it appeared, it directly obliterated most of the dark killing intent. The thunder light was soft and deep. What it formed was not a shining electric arc, but a light that flowed and fluctuated like water. It was not dazzling, but deep and tough. Not to mention others. Even Li Tianlan didn't know that the thunder-shocking realm could change like this. But the water-like thunderlight was a step slower after all. A small amount of saber light swept through Xianxia's body, and a large amount of blood directly splashed out, blooming with the thunderlight. The blood color and the deep blue intertwined, gorgeous like a flower. Li Tianlan smiled unexpectedly, and his smile was cold. The thunderlight wrapped around Xianxia slowly dissipated. Xianxia, who was covered in blood, her clothes were torn, and her face was pale, but she was still conscious. It was unknown when a slender and gentle figure had appeared on the battlefield. He had saved Xianxia and was holding her in his arms at this time. The two of them slowly descended from the air and landed on the high platform. The high platform was as flat as new. In the fierce battle, The high platform was not even damaged at all. Long time no see. The man landed with Xianxia in his arms. His eyes were calm and gentle. But under the gentle appearance, Li Tianlan clearly felt the fighting intent and killing intent deep in his eyes. Wang Shengxiao. If he hadn't suddenly appeared on the battlefield, even if Xianxia didn't die today, she would completely withdraw from the maneuver a month later. The battle was fierce and short. Xianxia rushed to the high platform. Li Tianlan reached out. He flicked his fingers. He flicked his fingers again. The battle was over. Xianxia lost. But in this short and fierce battle, no one thought that she lost so badly. Wang Shengxiao was a step too late. Li Tianlan was also a step too late. The two of them looked at each other quietly, tit for tat. A small number of spectators finally recovered from the battle. Everyone was thinking about Xiangxi's almost completely out of control knife light at the end of the battle. That was Li Tianlan's unique skill. He borrowed the enemy's power for his own use. There was a sudden exclamation in the crowd. This is all-embracing collection? Wang Shengxiao looked at Li Tianlan with deep eyes. This was a unique skill famous in the dark world in recent years. It was the unique skill of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. It simulated different sword intents and could be controlled at the same time. All-embracing collection borrowed the enemy's power for his own use. They were all unique skills of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. It's the 24 moves of sword. Li Tianlan's tone was indifferent. Wang Shengxiao smiled. In addition to calmness, there was only confidence in his eyes. You really have mastered the 24 moves of sword. He looked at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. I underestimated you. Maybe you will be a good opponent. Do you want to fight? Li Tianlan asked with a smile. He pointed to Xianxia. Even if it's revenge for her, I accept it. I can do it now. Wang Shengxiao's eyes flickered. He seemed to be tempted, but he finally shook his head. No hurry. He said indifferently. We'll see each other in the maneuver a month later. We need a witness with enough weight to end the grievances between the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family. Li Tianlan burst out laughing. In the penetrating laughter, his figure gradually disappeared from the high platform. Only his voice kept ringing, getting farther and farther away. Solve the grievances between the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai. You're not qualified yet. Wang Shengxiao narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of Li Tianlan's departure. He didn't speak for a long time. This man is really arrogant. Xianxia leaned in Wang Shengxiao's arms. Her voice was weak and cold. Wang Shengxiao smiled and said softly, He's really strong. Among the younger generation, you're the strongest. Xiangxi's voice was firm and proud. Wang Shengxiao didn't speak. He recalled the battle between Li Tianlan and Xianxia. From beginning to end, Li Tianlan had been standing in the same place and hadn't moved. He didn't draw his sword, either. Chapter 305. Some people's lives were glorious and powerful, while some people's lives were ordinary. And for a very small number of people, their lives were on the road. It was wandering. It was wandering. There was no purpose, so there would be no end. In June, when the Northern Hemisphere entered the early summer, Australia in the Southern Hemisphere had already ushered in the early winter. The bustling lights shone in the cold night of Sydney. The Bay Bridge bathed in lights was like a long rainbow across the sea. The lights fell on the water, illuminating a large area of water waves, a piece of glazed brilliance. This was a prosperous but cold, almost aesthetically beautiful city. The Sydney Opera House next to the Bay Bridge was already brightly lit. Lin Fengting, wearing a black coat, walked leisurely through the gate of the Opera House and went straight to the Opera Hall. Guests shuttled past him in twos and threes. Lin Fengting's expression was gentle and calm. He walked at a moderate pace. It was a kind of leisure and freedom emanating from his bones, very clear, but not infectious. This was only his own mood. The crowd passed by him at different speeds. Lin Fengting was alone, and his figure looked a little lonely. The team performing in the opera hall tonight was not famous. At most, it was a little famous. The members were not young, but their constantly skilled skills made them stand out in the past 2 years. Lin Fengting first met them in Vienna half a year ago. It was an ordinary but poignant opera. Lin Fengting did not like opera very much, but that performance had touched his heart without batting an eyelid, reminding him of his wife who had died of illness 10 years ago. She was also a woman who liked to travel. So Lin Fengting had been following the opera house for half a year. They did not know each other. Lin Fengting just liked to watch their performance. From Vienna, to Germany, via Star State, into Sydney, the next stop was Melbourne. The opera house's pace was very full, so their pace was very fast. Lin Fengting followed as he pleased. Being in a hurry was also a kind of scenery. The bell rang in the opera house. There were less than 20 minutes before the opera officially began. Stepping on the bell and entering the extremely complex and gorgeous opera hall built of boxwood and birch, Lin Fengting calmly looked for his seat. He had the most ordinary ticket in his hand, and the seat was at the back, not far from the door. Rows of red seats passed by. Lin Fengting slowly moved forward. He took off his coat. A wisp of natural and rich fragrance drifted over. Gentle and empty. This scent was different from any perfume. It was the most natural body fragrance of a woman, and it was unique. Lin Fengting, who had already found his seat, sniffled and subconsciously raised his head. Right next to his seat, a young woman was quietly sitting there, also observing him. The woman was wearing a dark blue cotton dress, and her long hair casually fell on her shoulders. Her sitting posture was elegant and formal, and her back was very straight. It was as if she was not here to watch an opera, but to negotiate. This was indeed a negotiation. The lights in the opera hall were dim. The light obscured the woman's beautiful face, but her bright and beautiful eyes, which seemed to be able to see the starry sky, were now quietly looking at Lin Fengting with a smile. Lin Fengting was stunned. It wasn't because he was stunned by the woman. Instead, it was an unexpected surprise. He didn't expect to see her here. But the moment he saw her, Lin Fengting knew that this was a negotiation. Although he didn't know what the other party wanted to talk about. Lin Fengting thought for a moment. He was a wild crane that stood aloof from worldly affairs and didn't pay attention to the so-called general trend, so he didn't remember the other party's name for a while. It wasn't that he had a bad memory. Strictly speaking, the two hadn't even formally met. He smiled and said vaguely, "Boss Qin, why are you here?" Qin Weibai, who seemed to be everywhere, was sitting next to Lin Fengting's seat. She always appeared in the most suitable place and did what she thought she should do the most. Qin Weibai bowed to Lin Fengting. Her smile was light, but her eyes were full of respect. "Sir is here, so I'm here." Qin Weibai opened her mouth with a smile. She paused and introduced herself, "I'm Qin Weibai." Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes. He took a deep look at Qin Weibai, sat down next to her, and said calmly, "Has Samsara Palace become powerful enough to track down an idle person like me?" "It's just an unintentional coincidence," Qin Weibai said softly. Her face flickered in the rotating lights of the opera hall, but people could feel her sincerity intuitively. "If you mind, sir, I'm willing to apologize." "It's not necessary." Lin Fengting shook his head, as if he didn't mind this kind of thing. He looked at the opera stage in front of him and said with a chuckle, "Boss Qin, did you come to Sydney to travel or visit a friend?" "I came specially for you, sir." Qin Weibai's tone was soft, neither servile nor overbearing. Lin Fengting frowned imperceptibly. Sitting next to Qin Weibai, he felt uncomfortable all over. Qin Weibai was naturally extremely beautiful. Lin Fengting had seen countless beautiful women in his 50 years of experience. But in terms of appearance and grace, Qin Weibai was absolutely unique. This was an undeniable fact. But sitting next to her, Lin Fengting felt more the cruelty and darkness of the dark world than her outstanding beauty. This was something he had been too lazy to touch. "What's the matter?" Lin Fengting asked calmly. Qin Weibai's tone became softer and softer. She said with a smile, "I want to borrow a sword from you, sir." Borrow a sword from Lin Fengting. Lin Fengting was not famous in the dark world, but this did not mean that this sword was worthless. Only a few people knew what his sword meant. There was silence. Lin Fengting suddenly fell silent. He felt a little strange inside. It was strange that Qin Weibai appeared here. What made him even more strange was her request. His sword could do a lot of things and kill a lot of people. But Lin Fengting smiled. I don't think it's necessary for me to lend you a sword. He looked at Qin Weibai without reservation or mockery. He just told a fact. And even if I am willing to lend it to you, can you afford it? Qin Weibai's expression did not change. She said elegantly, we can talk about anything. What do you want? As long as I have it, I can give it to you. That was exactly the problem. Qin Weibai didn't know what Lin Fengting wanted. And Lin Fengting really didn't want anything. He looked at Qin Weibai and suddenly had an idea. He said with a strange smile, I have a son. If I want you to be my daughter-in-law, will you be willing? Qin Weibai didn't change her expression. She didn't even get angry. She just smiled slightly and said, I don't have it. It belongs to my man. Lin Fengting's eyes changed. Your man? He thought of Li Tianlan, the young man who could shock the world with one sword in Heaven Capital. He had collected information about him. He even knew that Li Tianlan had returned to Huating now. How about I borrow a sword from you for the sake of my man and the Li family? Qin Weibai looked at Lin Fengting with a smile. Her demeanor was perfect. She said borrow. Lin Fengting knew what it meant. He owed the Li family a sword. Qin Weibai also wanted to owe him a sword. They didn't interfere with each other. Lin Fengting looked at the stage in front of him expressionlessly. He wanted to refuse. However, he had too many speculations and curiosity about the Samsara Palace. Before he figured out some things, he didn't want to completely lose contact with the Samsara Palace. But he couldn't borrow this sword. His sword entered the dark world. The Lin clan was equivalent to entering the secular world. So he shook his head and didn't speak. Silence was often a kind of determination. Qin Weibai was still calm. She wasn't surprised by Lin Fengting's attitude. If it was so easy to borrow this sword, she wouldn't have traveled from the north to the south of the earth in person. What do you think of the Samsara Palace, sir? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Lin Fengting's heart skipped a beat. He was silent for a while, then said with a smile, I don't know much about the dark world, but as far as I know, the Samsara Palace is still very strong. Very strong. Qin Weibai nodded. But it's also very weak. We have the invincible realm experts on the top of the divine list, murderous weapons, experts and resources, but we don't have the foundation. In terms of real strength, it's hard for us to surpass any superpower, let alone giants like the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan. She said softly, but her temperament began to change slowly, becoming cold and sharp. Sir, I don't want to be enemies with the Lin clan. The Samsara Palace can't afford to offend a power like you, whether you enter the secular world or come out. That's why I want to borrow a sword from you. Lin Fengting didn't understand Qin Weibai's meaning for a while. He thought for a while, then said indifferently, Is there any cause and effect between not wanting to be enemies with us and wanting to borrow a sword from me? Qin Weibai took a deep look at Lin Fengting. Her eyes were deep and bright, and her voice became colder. The dark world is chaotic now, but it's not the most chaotic. Lin Fengting frowned. The Wang family of Beihai, the Jianghu family of South America, Knights Templars, the Dark Knights, Kunlun City, the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, the Fantasy World, the Heroes Club. The names of superpowers floated out of Qin Weibai's lips one after another. The Guardian Angel of Star State, the Shadow Throne of Europe, the Aborigines of Africa. All the forces are now fighting every day. Even the Polar Ground Alliance is in internal strife. Sir, do you know the cause of this? Lin Fengting frowned and continued to be silent. He really didn't know these, or he didn't know much. The seemingly magnificent general trend had always been something beyond his line of sight. Since the final battle of Heaven Capital, the cause of everything is that the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City united against the Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai said indifferently. He was telling the truth. The two superpowers of Jianghu state retaliated against the Samsara Palace. The Jiang family of South America, which had suffered heavy losses, wanted to make up for the losses and take revenge. The Dark Knights, which had a good relationship with the Samsara Palace, intervened and provoked Knights Templars. The battlefield continued to expand. In the case of wars everywhere, the Guardian Angel of Star State began to guard the country. Fantasy World of North America also took responsibility. With a sense of crisis, the Jiang family of South America contacted the Aborigines of Africa. So the Shadow Throne got involved. The Purgatory of Heaven capital seemed to stay out of it, but deities' actions in Annan State held up a considerable part of the energy of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. This was an unexpected mess. No one could have imagined that it would come to this. Fighting and killing. The flames of war swept the world in just 2 years, and there was no sign of it stopping. The original reason was no longer important. The most important thing was that now all the superpowers had no way out. This was the game of the entire Dark World, and most of the Invincible Realm experts had been involved. No one knew what the final result would be. But under the huge investment, all the superpowers had been in a killing frenzy. Now almost all the superpowers were bracing themselves to hold on. They didn't dare to retreat even if they wanted to. This was really out of their control. What do you want to say? Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows and asked. What I want to say is that now any power involved has lost the qualification to suspend the game. The contradiction has intensified to the extreme. The Wang family of Beihai doesn't dare to take a step back, nor does the Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai said blandly. Qin Weibai said blandly, but the difference is that Samsara Palace has been prepared for this for a long time. From the very beginning, we have already expected this situation. Lin Fengting's eyes finally became serious. The Samsara Palace had been mentally prepared for everything today. From another perspective, could it be explained that today's chaos in the Dark World was completely planned by the Samsara Palace? All the superpowers in the Dark World were giants. With the original reason, it was not difficult to deliberately disturb the whole situation. From the moment the Samsara Palace contacted the Dark Knights, the situation had begun to be a little out of control. At that time, the Samsara Palace began to fight back. When all the superpowers were most likely to cool down, the Samsara Palace's counterattack was equivalent to sounding the horn of war. So the situation was completely out of control. Chaos. More and more chaotic. The Dark World was a game of chess. But the Samsara Palace really turned the whole Dark World into a game of chess and even regarded itself as a pawn. It was not too difficult to create such a situation. Any superpower could do it if it planned hard. But such a situation had been avoided by all the superpowers in the past. Because a chaotic situation was not good for anyone. Just like now. Even the Samsara Palace, which had planned everything, did not get any benefit. On the contrary, it suffered heavy losses. So why did the Samsara Palace plan all this? Lin Fengting was deep in thought. Qin Weibai changed her sitting posture, looked at Lin Fengting, who was silent, and continued. Sir, if I remember correctly, there are branches of the Lin clan in Europe and America, right? And it's a very powerful branch of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting's expression suddenly changed. His eyes suddenly became cold, and a majestic killing intent instantly surged in the opera hall. The Lin clan did not enter the secular world. That was the direct descendant of the Lin clan in Switzerland. The Lin clan had always been free. The direct descendant headquarters almost never cared about how the branches developed. But the branches were part of the Lin clan after all. If they were at a critical juncture. What do you want? Lin Fengting asked coldly. In such a chaotic situation, as long as a clue is needed, the powerful and hidden Lin clan will be involved in the Dark World. It's not difficult for me to do this. Qin Weibai's tone became cold. She wanted to owe Lin Fengting a sword. It was a request, a negotiation, and a threat. What she wanted, she had to get it. Lin Fengting's face became more and more ugly. He looked at Qin Weibai coldly. After a while, he suddenly laughed. Boss Qin, aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? Lin Fengting asked. His voice suddenly became very soft. If you kill me, you will lead the Lin clan's headquarters into the secular world to fight for countless branches of the Lin clan in less than a month. Is this the result you want, sir? Qin Weibai said calmly. You borrowed a sword from me because you also want the Lin clan to enter the secular world. Lin Fengting's tone was cold. It's not the same. Qin Weibai shook her head. If I want the Lin clan to enter the secular world, I will call you your highness tonight, not sir. Lin Fengting's heart moved, and he seemed to be thinking about something. Where are you going to use this sword? He asked softly. Snow country. Qin Weibai said without hesitation. The Polar Ground Alliance was in Snow Country. Lin Fengting suddenly understood that the Samsara Palace completely wanted to mess up the whole Dark World. What do you want? At this moment, Lin Fengting finally had some curiosity. Me. Qin Weibai smiled softly and said softly, I just want a sword from you, sir. Lin Fengting looked helpless. What he asked and what she said were two completely different things. We are not enemies, he said. Qin Weibai nodded to show her approval. Compared with the Li family, I am more willing to believe in the Lin clan. Sir, I am a madman. If what I said just now offended you, I am willing to apologize. But this matter is very important to me. Lin Fengting's face softened. Is it for Li Tianlan? He asked softly. Qin Weibai just looked at him and did not speak. Lin Fengting sighed softly. Qin Weibai was the biggest decision-maker in the Samsara Palace besides the Palace Master. It could be said that she had dragged all the forces, including the Samsara Palace, onto the chessboard. Besides that, how much did she do? For Li Tianlan. Can a woman really do this for a man? I have 3 conditions. Lin Fengting suddenly spoke. Go ahead. Qin Weibai's eyes instantly focused. First of all, I don't need you to pay me back. I owe Li Tianlan that sword move, and I'll use it on you. So we don't owe each other anything. Second, I want to see the master of Samsara Palace. Third, I won't attack the Wang family of Beihai. Lin Fengting said. Qin Weibai instinctively frowned. But Tianlan's sword. You've done so much for him. So what if you take this sword for him? You're his woman, so isn't he your man? Lin Fengting asked. Qin Weibai's face suddenly turned pale, and she was lost in thought. A long time passed. She nodded slowly. Sure, he said indifferently. There was only tranquility and solemnity between her brows. Lin Fengting looked at her quietly. He wanted to ask her if it was worth it. But when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he sighed quietly and said softly, Boss Qin, have you ever been happy in your life? Qin Weibai froze for a moment. Her eyes were in a trance. Yes, she said softly after thinking for a long time. In Huiting, she was happy every minute and second she spent with Li Tianlan. She remembered every word he said, every expression on his face. That happiness was short. But it was enough. Really. It was enough. Lin Fengting shook his head in silence. He didn't know if Qin Weibai was happy. He only felt that Qin Weibai was very tired now. When do you need this sword? Lin Fengting asked. About a month later. Qin Weibai came to her senses and said. So soon. Lin Fengting was a little surprised. He looked at the stage and said with a chuckle, It seems that I have to go back to prepare and adjust my state. It was hard for him to imagine that the war in the dark world that lasted for 2 years would end in a month. It was also hard to imagine what the result would be. He looked at Qin Weibai with complicated eyes. The number 2 figure of Samsara Palace in front of him seemed to be ready for everything. I'll go to Snow Country in a month. Lin Fengting said. The opera was about to begin. Qin Weibai stood up, bowed deeply to Lin Fengting, and said respectfully, Thank you, sir. She stood up straight and went straight to the door without looking at the stage. In the other direction, flaming fire followed them quietly and blindly. Qin Weibai walked in front. Flaming fire was behind her. But her figure was still so lonely. Lin Fengting watched her leave and subconsciously grasped the coat in his hand. It was early winter in June in Australia. The air was cold. It was like a glacier in the polar region. Chapter 306. Just as the Dongqing clan's words carried weight in Zhongyuan, the Jiang family's foundation was also unique in Beijiang of Zhongzhou State. Perhaps the Jiang family in Beijiang had not reached the absolute ruling power of the Dongqing clan in the Central Plains, but in Beijiang, the Jiang family could definitely be said to be the largest wealthy family. This was the Jiang family of Jiang Shan. It was also Jiang Shangyu's Jiang family. In the past 100 years, the Jiang family had been running Beijiang for nearly 3 generations. If there were no accidents, there would be a 4th generation. As the generations went on, sooner or later, the largest provincial capital in Zhongzhou State would become the Jiang family's backyard. This was a family with enough wisdom and tenacity. Rational, steady, and down-to-earth. The changes in the northern borderline in the past 100 years were almost all clearly marked by the Jiang family. The current patriarch of the Jiang family was Jiang. He was one of the members of the decision-making committee of Jianghu State, the leader of Beijiang, one of the former four spirits of Jianghu State, and the former general of 9 regions. This was a real high position and power, whether in Beijiang or Jianghu State. The Jiang family rose to power in the generation of Jiang Shan's grandfather. At that time, the old man did not have any so-called background or support. After he was assigned a job to the northern borderline, he was down-to-earth and conscientious for nearly 40 years. The old man himself did not have any great achievements, and the peak of his career was only the mayor of a prefecture-level city. However, the old man had left behind a network that could not be underestimated. With the support of the old man, Jiang Shan's father and siblings began to establish a foothold in Beijiang. Jiang Shan's uncle entered the Western theater of operations. His father continued to climb his career and finally entered the promotion sequence. Although it was only a deputy position, his power was extraordinary, and he finally entered the eyes of the prince group. His aunt established the family business of the Jiang family. His uncle specialized in martial arts. The 4 siblings each had their own development. That was the beginning of the entire Jiang family. Another few decades later, the Jiang family began to rise in Jiang Shan's generation. Jiang Shan made full use of the resources accumulated by 2 generations in Beijiang and the connections of the prince group. Jiang Shan also lived up to the expectations of the people and continued to advance in this land where the people were valiant, steady, silent, domineering, yet calm and collected. In the span of 3 generations, the Jiang family had become a second-rate family from the beginning, which had no foundation at all, and finally completed the transformation into a first-rate wealthy family. The Jiang family was the soul of Beijiang. The Jiang family relied on the northern borderline. This feeling had been accumulated over several generations, and it had become thick and passionate. Jiang Xianxia had been in Beijiang for a week, but he never got to see his father. Jiang Shan was very busy. He could be said to be one of the most successful leaders among the previous leaders of Beijiang. His daily schedule was full. Jiang Xianxia got the news from the secretary that Jiang Shan had not returned home for nearly a month. But Jiang Xianxia had to wait. He had something very important to confirm with his father. It was almost noon. An old-fashioned Mercedes-Benz slowly drove into the Beijiang Council's compound. The number plate of Beijiang reflected the sunlight, looking mysterious and majestic. Jiang Xianxia, who had been sitting on the balcony in a daze, stood up and jumped directly from the balcony on the 2nd floor. The Mercedes-Benz slowly came to a stop. Jiang Xianxia walked to the side of the car and opened the back door himself. Jiang Shan, who finally had some time to go home, got out of the car. Jiang Shan was not tall and slightly fat. He was less than 50 years old this year, but his hair had already turned white. His skin was dark. Judging from his appearance, he looked like an ordinary fatty. But this was a very dignified fatty. His expression was calm, and his whole body carried a kind of natural majesty after being in a high position for a long time. He was like the vast land of Beijiang, desolate and distant. Jiang Xianxia smiled and called him Dad. Jiang Shan nodded and said calmly, "Let's eat first. I have a meeting in the afternoon." Jiang Xianxia nodded, took the bag from his father's hand, and walked into the number 1 villa of the council's compound. 7 days at home. He knew very well that the real time with his father was only the time for this meal. Jiang Xianxia made a few dishes by himself, and a braised fish was the only meat. The father and son sat at the table and ate in silence, like a whirlwind. After the meal, Jiang Xianxia made a cup of tea for Jiang Shan. "What's the matter?" Jiang Shan took the teacup and asked casually. "The final maneuver of the 2 academies will begin in a month. Dad, will you also go?" Jiang Xianxia asked. Jiang Shan took a sip of the hot tea and thought for a while. He shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. I've received the invitation, but I may not have time." He put down the teacup, knocked on the table casually, and said, "Gu Han's Han entered your 3,000 world?" Jiang Xianxia nodded. His expression was still relaxed, but his eyes became dignified. The news had already spread throughout Jianghu State. But for the father and son pair, this kind of news clearly had other meanings. Jiang Shan's thick fingers tapped on the table again and again. After a long time he said calmly, "What's your plan?" "I came home this time to see what your plan is." Jiang Shangyu opened his mouth respectfully. Jiang Shan was silent again. This time, he was silent for a longer time. Jiang Shangyu waited patiently. Is there any progress on Wang Yuetong's side? Jiang Shan looked at Jiang Shangyu and suddenly asked. Jiang Shangyu smiled helplessly and spread his hands, saying, "Your son is not charming enough. I went to see her several times, but she was lukewarm. I didn't succeed in asking her out to watch a movie or have a meal. I didn't even get close to her within 2 meters. What progress can I make? Has it always been like this?" Jiang Shan was also a little helpless. Jiang Shangyu nodded. Although he was smiling bitterly, he didn't look very depressed. "I don't care about her anymore. I heard that she lived with Li Tianlan a few years ago. I've met Li Tianlan. Although he disappeared for 3 years, he has always been the #1 person among the young generation in Jianghu State, at least in terms of reputation. Wang Yuetong's heart belongs to someone, so I don't expect to change anything." Jiang Shan frowned. Wang Yuetong had always been one of his targets, but it was not until more than a year ago that Jiang Shan began to act. In the midterm election more than a year ago, Jiang Shan could be said to be a further popular figure. The 3 council giants retired. Except for the position of Dongqing Wudi, Jiang Shan was sure to sit in any of the 2 positions. But the point was that he didn't want to move at all. And it was the prince group behind him that pushed him to take the position. It was a great advancement in power to enter the Hidden Dragon Sea, the center of Jianghu State, from Beijiang, but it was not what Jiang Shan wanted. The short-term expansion of power did not have many benefits. On the contrary, because Jiang Shangyu had not fully grown up, once he left Beijiang, the foundation of the entire Jiang family would be affected. Beijiang was everything to the Jiang family. Once Jiang Shan rushed to the commanding heights, the foundation and power that they had built for several generations would have an extremely tragic gap, which was what no one in the Jiang family wanted to see. But it was the prince group that put forward this motion. Jiang Shan was one of the super heavyweights of the prince group. The prince group pushed him to take the position not only because they were worried about the Jiang family that was gradually growing in Beijiang, but also because of the overall consideration. If they pushed Jiang Shan to take a step forward, the position of the top leader of Beijiang could be vacated by the successor of the prince group in advance, and finally strive for a better position and ranking in the next election. This was considered from the perspective of the whole group. And the benefits were obvious. But group interests and personal interests often conflicted. If Jiang Shan didn't move, it would be difficult for the next successor of the prince group to find an ideal gold-plated area. After all, Jiang Shan was from the prince group. Even if he didn't want to move, he couldn't oppose it openly at that time. But at that time, he took the opportunity of investigation and quietly contacted the Wang family of Beihai. He didn't hide what he did. He met Wang Tianzong and expressed the hope that he could unite with the Wang family of Beihai by marriage. The objects were Wang Yuetong and Jiang Shangyu. At that time, Wang Tianzong said with a livid face that he couldn't control his wicked girl, but he also said that they could contact her first. Soon after Jiang Shan came back, Wang Yuetong entered Yuzhou. During this year, she had been working in the General Staff Department as a deputy division level, which created an opportunity for Jiang Shangyu. It was obvious that Jiang Shan contacted the Wang family of Beihai. After the prince group waited again and again, and with the pressure from Kunlun City, they finally cancelled the idea of letting Jiang Shan move. But the rift between the 2 sides had gradually formed. Jiang Shangyu knew that his father was looking forward to the marriage between him and Wang Yuetong. But now it seemed that such a marriage would not work at all. So in the past year or so, in the case of a gradual rift with the prince group, the Jiang family was in a very difficult situation and under great pressure. It was no secret that the Jiang family could not unite with the Wang family of Beihai by marriage. So the Special Warfare Group, which had been very close to the Jiang family, began to quietly offer an olive branch. But Jiang Shan didn't respond. As the final maneuver of the 2 academies approached, Jiang Shangyu's 3000 world accepted Gu Han's Han, which could be said to be the most obvious signal given by the Jiang family in the past year or so. This signal was sensitive enough to at least cause uneasiness in the prince group. But now, everything was not certain. Jiang Shangyu came back to see Jiang Shan's specific plan. Gu Han's Han entered the 3000 world. This seemed to be a transaction and alliance between the younger generation. But in fact, within the Special Warfare Group and the Prince Group, this was the clearest signal. Under this signal, there were 2 endings. The first was that Xianxia would withdraw from the 3000 world after the final maneuver when Gu Hanzhan occupied the leading position. The second was that Xianxia would stay and serve as the number 2 figure in the 3000 world. The first ending proved that although there was a rift between Jianghu and the Prince Group, he was still a member of the Prince Group, at least without obvious disloyalty. The second was equivalent to directly showing that one of the Jiang family's feet had stepped into the position of the Special Warfare Group. The position of the Jiang family would become very subtle. The impact of a member of the decision-making committee changing his position was too great. But before Jianghu officially made a final decision, the Jiang family still had the value of winning him over, but it would also arouse the hostility within the Prince Group. This was a subtle and dangerous opportunity. Before the final maneuver began, Jianghu must listen to his father's decision. If you have no decision, I can withdraw from the 3000 world after the maneuver. Jianghu suddenly said. Jiang Shan's fingers, which were tapping on the table, paused. He raised his eyelids and looked at him, saying, "Are you willing?" Jianghu smiled. "It's nothing. Gu Hanzhan can't take away what belongs to me." Jiang Shan took a deep look at his son and said calmly, "What's your plan?" "I don't have a specific plan yet. I just have a goal." Jianghu shook his head and whispered, "Li Tianlan." Jiang Shan's eyes suddenly froze. "Li Tianlan, do you want to cooperate with him? I have to get in touch with him first." Jianghu smiled brightly when he thought of the young man who almost killed him in Heaven Capital 3 years ago. "What if you don't have to withdraw from the 3000 world?" Jiang Shan asked. "Then it's even more necessary to get in touch with Li Tianlan." Jianghu lowered his eyelids and said calmly, "I can give the leadership of the 3000 world to Gu Hanzhan. But why can't he ask himself why? Why does he take it for granted?" "Be careful." Jiang Shan frowned. "Father, don't worry." Jianghu said softly, "I won't do anything before I'm sure." Jiang Shan said, "Then don't quit for the time being. How long will it take for you to enter the thunder-shocking realm?" Jianghu had the exquisite bone and the heavenly king heart. 3 years ago, he was at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. 3 years later, he still hadn't entered the thunder-shocking realm. "Anytime." Jianghu laughed. "Dad, I'm going to celebrate for myself. Lend me second uncle's cruise ship." "You want to?" Jiang Shan pondered. "I want to hold a banquet in Huiting." Jianghu said with a smile, "The invitations have been sent out. Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanzhan, Song Ci, Li Tianlan, and Dongqing Rushi will all receive the invitations. In addition, I also invited Wang Yuetong. Li Tianlan will go, so will Wang Yuetong. Ha! Maybe there will be a good show." "Wang Yuetong." Jiang Shan shook his head and sighed. "It's a pity. If she could marry you." Jianghu was a little surprised. "Dad, why do you attach so much importance to the Wang family of Beihai? Even if we don't stay in the Prince Group, we won't be worse than the Wang family of Beihai in the Special Warfare Group, right?" "What do you know?" Jiang Shan shook his head in self-mockery. "The Wang family of Beihai has a special position in Zhongzhou State. They are powerful, but their focus is destined to be on Beihai province. If we cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai, Beijiang may become the sphere of influence of the Southeast Group. But here, the Jiang family is the master. As long as we don't have other ideas, Wang Tianzong won't interfere in the affairs of Beijiang. Kunlun City is different. Even if we join the Special Warfare Group, Gu Xingyun will quietly support a force that can compete with the Jiang family. Kunlun City has a long history, but it has only been at the peak for a short time. It's just a nouveau riche. How can it compare with the Wang family of Beihai? You can look down on any force, but you can't look down on the Wang family of Beihai." Jiang Shan said with a dignified look. Jianghu answered casually and said with a smile, "Of course. How can I look down on the Wang family of Beihai now?" Jiang Shan frowned and sighed softly. "We are in a difficult situation now. But if we have other choices, we'd better stay away from Li Tianlan as much as possible. That kind of possible cooperation." He suddenly paused. "Do you think highly of him?" "He is a person with infinite possibilities." Jianghu said seriously, "I've contacted him. He is the kind of person who would never be so ostentatious if he is not sure. I saw him severely injure Gu Yunxia in the video, and I also saw the video of him fighting with Xianxia. It made me feel very wrong. Li Tianlan is very abnormal, but I can't tell what's wrong. Dad, I have an intuition that the current Wang Shangxiao should not be a match for Li Tianlan. Even among the younger generation, Li Tianlan has no opponent. So what? Jiang Shan said indifferently. After all, he is just a young generation. Does Li Tianlan have time to grow up? When it comes to the older generation, there is nothing to worry about. Jiang Shangyu said disapprovingly. His Highness Li Honghe is still alive. He forcibly restored to the peak state at the border. Now he should be getting stronger and stronger. Senior Li was the third on the divine list. Even if he is still not a match for Wang Tianzong, he is not weak. As long as he is alive, the Wang family of Beihai will not dare to do anything rashly. Indeed. Zhang Shan's face was a little gloomy. The Wang family of Beihai does not dare to do anything rashly. But it's not that they will not do anything. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a while. Thinking of the Wang family of Beihai's increasingly magnificent style of doing things in recent years, he still shook his head. If they really do something, I don't think they can withstand Senior Li's dying counterattack. That will cause them heavy losses. Bullshit. Zhang Shan's slightly fat face shook. He glared at his son fiercely and took a deep breath. After a long time, he suddenly said, "Our Jiang family has been developing well these years. Many people say that if the Jiang family can have an invincible realm expert, then now we will definitely not be weaker than the real top rich and powerful families like the Dongqing clan. Have you heard this saying?" Jiang Shangyu raised his eyebrows and nodded subconsciously. Jiang Shan smiled with some pain and self-mockery. Actually, we used to have an invincible realm expert. Swish. Jiang Shangyu almost jumped up. The Jiang family had an invincible realm expert? Even in the past, Jiang Shangyu had never heard of it. How is it possible? He asked after taking a deep breath. Nothing is impossible. It's just that few people know. Maybe only I know. Jiang Shan's smile was extremely ugly. The invincible realm expert of our Jiang family can almost be regarded as the shortest-lived invincible realm expert in the dark world. This is not glory, it is a shame. Jiang Shangyu breathed quickly and stared at his father. It's your little grandpa. Jiang Shan sighed softly. We have been very close to the Special Warfare Group. More than 20 years ago, after Li Guangtu's treason, Kunlun City had just taken over. During that period, the old patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai had just died. You should know that Wang Tianzong broke through to the invincible realm relatively late, so during that time, there was no invincible realm expert in the Wang family of Beihai. Gu Xingyun was very ambitious. He just stepped on the Li family and wanted to take advantage of the time when the Wang family of Beihai was empty to swallow the Wang family of Beihai. During that time, Wang Tianzong did not enter the invincible realm. As long as he died, the Wang family of Beihai would be in a different situation. But at that time, Kunlun City was closely watched by all parties. It was not convenient for them to take action, so they found your little grandpa, my uncle. At that time, my uncle seemed to be a top expert of the half-step invincible realm, but only I knew that he had just broken through to the invincible realm. Because of this, we were moved by the benefits offered by Kunlun City. My uncle, who was in the invincible realm, accepted the deal and went to the Wang family of Beihai to assassinate Wang Tianzong. Jiang Shangyu's mouth twitched and he said subconsciously, "What happened later?" Later? Jiang Shan's mouth twitched and he said dryly, "Later he naturally failed and died." How did he die? Jiang Shangyu asked. Jiang Shan was silent for a long time before he took a deep breath. I don't know. Jiang Shan said, although my uncle finally escaped back. He died in front of me before he had time to say a few words to me. It was not an invincible realm expert who gave him a fatal injury, but a kind of horror similar to a nightmare appeared on Jiang Shan's face. That was undisguised fear and dread, which came from instinct and from the soul. But 12 elites, 6 in the thunder-shocking realm and 6 in the fire-flaming realm. How is it possible? Jiang Shangyu couldn't help but cry out. He couldn't imagine how this ridiculous lineup killed an invincible realm expert. Even if he was an expert who had just entered the invincible realm. That's the truth. After the extreme fear, Jiangshan's expression was only numb. Who the hell are those people? Jiang Shangyu asked subconsciously. I secretly checked, but there was no result. Those people seem to not exist. The only clue I have is a name left by your grandfather when he died. Chapter 307. Nanqing Temple was built in the deepest part of Nanqing Street, and the whole street got its name from Nanqing Temple. In the hundreds of years since the founding of Jianghu State, Yuzhou had become more and more prosperous. Today, Nanqing Temple had become one of the few buildings of the previous dynasty in Yuzhou City. Nanqing Street was narrow and deep. 2 rows of straight poplars were planted on both sides of the street. The dense canopies of the thick poplars almost covered the sky. Standing in the middle of the street and looking up at the sky, there was only a line left. This was known as one of the quietest streets in Yuzhou. There were no huge residential areas and dense small shops on both sides of the street, only 2 neat rows of dark cyan small buildings. The poplars were straight. The buildings were neat. Like an army. The wind blew in Yuzhou at dusk. There was no dusk on the horizon, and the whole sky was gloomy. The wind before the rain poured into Nanqing Street, and the rows of poplars rustled. It seemed that there was only the sound of the wind in the world. Nanqing Temple sat quietly at the end of the street, quiet and solemn in the wind. Nanqing Temple was not a temple. The star flag of Jianghu State fluttered in front of the gate, and the national emblem of Jianghu State with shining stars hung at the gate of the temple, looking extremely dignified. This was the office of the second department of the General Staff. The second department was the most mysterious and free department of the General Staff. Its staff was complicated, and the number of people outside the establishment was countless times more than that inside the establishment. The main task of the second department was to set up intelligence networks, collect intelligence, organize and analyze it, and take necessary actions according to national interests when necessary. So the second department of the General Staff had a name that was recognized by everyone. The Military Intelligence Department of Jianghu State. The gloomy day turned into night in the wind. In the beautiful Nanqing Temple, a young short-haired woman opened the door of a side hall, turned off the lights inside, and walked directly to the gate of Nanqing Temple. The woman was tall and slender. She was indescribably seductive. She was dressed very simply. She wore ordinary canvas shoes and a pair of light blue jeans that wrapped around her slender legs and round buttocks. She wore an ordinary white short-sleeved shirt. She did not have any makeup on. She looked simple and natural. The former enchantment seemed to be fading away from her. Pureness settled into maturity. Her long, silky hair turned into a short, sharp haircut. Steadiness replaced liveliness. Her figure was lonely and even weak, but with an indescribable stubbornness. It was an indescribable beauty. Nanqing Temple was quiet and gloomy at night. The woman was carrying a simple handbag. Walking quietly in the flourishing Nanqing Temple, it was as if he had lit up the entire night sky. He had been in Yuzhou for more than a year. Whether it was day or night, she was always the most beautiful scenery in Nanqing Temple and the most beautiful color on Nanqing Street. Yue Tong, working overtime again? A gentle voice sounded. Under the night sky, Nanqing Temple was illuminated by a faint light. A figure with a blurry face was standing there. Wang Yuetong couldn't see his face clearly, but from his military uniform, especially the marshal's epaulette, she could clearly judge his identity. General Yi. Wang Yuetong stood at attention and saluted. She said in a flat tone, "Why are you here?" Standing in front of her was the god of army of Jianghu State, Yi Dongxing. Yi Dongxing's personal force was not extremely powerful, and his realm of the thunder-shocking realm was just something he could show off. He was known as the god of army of Jianghu State, and the proudest thing about him was his brain. Over the years, Yi Dongsheng was the best candidate to be the commander in several covert foreign disputes and numerous large-scale military exercises in Jianghu State. And the wars he commanded were almost never defeated. Although Jianghu State suffered heavy losses in the final battle of Heaven Capital, it was not Yi Dongxing's fault. Jianghu State valued the cooperation with the Samsara Palace too much. As a result, when the Samsara Palace made a move, all of Yi Dongxing's plans suddenly became useless. And this matter more or less had an impact on his promotion. If not, when Qi Beizong, the standing minister of the army headquarters of Jianghu State, retired 2 years ago, Yi Dongsheng would become the strongest opponent of Dongqing Wudi. Once Yi Dongsheng won, the overall power of the Wang family of Beihai and the southeast faction would expand rapidly, and some more and more obvious hidden dangers would be suppressed by Yi Dongsheng. To say the least, even if Yi Dongsheng failed in the end, the Wang family of Beihai could get more chips, and it would be easier to trade with the Dongqing clan for the border control corps. Unfortunately, all of this came to nothing because of the betrayal of the Samsara Palace in the final battle of Heaven Capital, which directly led to Yi Dongxing's serious lack of competitiveness when competing with Dongqing Wudi. In fact, the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast Group were really having a bad time in recent years. The hidden dangers inside the Wang family of Beihai were getting more and more serious, and the internal conflicts had been escalating in the past 2 years. Now it had reached the point where all discerning people could detect it. In the past 3 years, the Wang family of Beihai had at least 2 opportunities to eliminate this hidden danger. The first was that Yi Dongxing became the new giant of the empire. If he defeated Dongqing Wudi and took over, all the hidden dangers would be suppressed. Unfortunately, it was Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Control Corps, who came up in the end. Yi Dongsheng was still suppressed as the deputy minister of the army headquarters and the minister of the general staff. The second opportunity was for Wang Xianxia to inherit the dragon vein. If Wang Xianxia merged the dragon vein after breaking through the peak of the Thundershocking realm, he could enter the invincible realm in just 1 or 2 years with the help of the immortality potion. This could also eliminate the hidden dangers inside the Wang family of Beihai. But when the Wang family of Beihai was still preparing for these, he had already perfected his martial arts with the help of the dragon vein. So the hidden dangers of the Wang family of Beihai still existed. The nerves of every big shot of the Southeast Group were getting tighter and tighter. In the dim light, Wang Yuetong took 2 steps forward. She could clearly see the solemnity in Yi Dongxing's eyes. Wang Yuetong hesitated a little, but in the end, she didn't ask anything. Yi Dongsheng sighed tiredly, looked at Wang Yuetong, and said with a chuckle, "I'm here for a meeting and to see you. Yuetong, you haven't called me Uncle Yi for a long time. I work in the general staff, and now I'm a soldier under your command. It's not appropriate to call me Uncle Yi," Wang Yuetong said lightly. Yi Dongsheng looked at Wang Yuetong as if he were looking at a child in a fit of pique. He knew that Wang Yuetong held a grudge against him. It was Wang Tianzong's arrangement that she came to work in the general staff. The general staff had always been the traditional sphere of influence of the Southeast Group. Yi Dongsheng, as the deputy minister of the army headquarters, was in charge of the general staff, and he managed the place well. Wang Yuetong worked in the general staff, which meant that she had always been under his eyes. It was not surveillance, but Yi Dongxing paid a lot of attention to Wang Yuetong's movements. Wang Yuetong naturally didn't like this feeling. "What's wrong with it?" Yi Dongsheng sighed. "I was your grandfather's secretary for nearly 10 years. For a few years, your father put you in foster care at our home. I watched you grow up." Wang Yuetong looked calm and did not say a word. She was like a withered but stubborn flower that refused to wither. "Yuetong, now your father and I are under a lot of pressure. You can't be willful at this time," Yi Dongsheng said helplessly. "I'm not willful, but I don't think marrying Jiang Shangyu will help you," Wang Yuetong said lightly. Yi Dongxing took a deep breath. "You don't have to marry Jiang Shangyu. On this matter, your father didn't give Jiang Shan a clear answer. He just wants you to come to Yuzhou and get in touch with other young people. You don't like Jiang Shangyu, but what about others?" Over the past year, there have been more than double digits of people pursuing you, many of whom have excellent family backgrounds and moral characters. Don't you like any of them? "I don't like them," Wang Yuetong said without hesitation. "I already have someone I like. How can I like others?" "You're acting in a fit of pique," Yi Dongsheng snorted. He and Wang Tianzong were very good friends, so he treated Wang Yuetong like his own daughter. "Think about it carefully. Do you really like Li Tianlan? How long have you been in contact with him? I admit that he is excellent, and he does have the possibility to impress you, but that's not all. You and he may have admired each other. You think it's love, but it's not at all. You're just acting in a fit of pique. If your father didn't bring you back from Li Tianlan, you wouldn't have contacted him for 3 years. Maybe your feelings for him would have faded. He did a stupid thing. It's because he brought you back to Beihai that you feel unreconciled. Li Tianlan, who used to be unimportant, has become very important. Girl, isn't that willful? No. Wang Yuetong's voice was still faint, without any ups and downs, without the youthful vigor that belonged to young people. Uncle Yi, you don't understand. She said softly, I can be sure of my feelings, but I don't want to explain it. We don't spend much time together, but I feel at ease and calm when I stay with him. Feelings can't be measured by the length of time. Yi Dongxing remained silent. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, well, even if you're sure of your feelings, can you be sure of Li Tianlan's feelings? You like him, but does he like you? Qin Weibai is his woman, and Dongqing Rushi is his fiancé. To be frank, Dongqing Rushi is no worse than you, and Qin Weibai is even more. Ahem. Girl, have you ever thought about this? Even if you're by his side, what position do you have? Wang Yuetong froze on the spot. The wind in the night sky gradually dissipated. The clouds pressed down. It began to rain in Yuzhou, drop by drop. Wang Yuetong stood quietly in the rain, and her eyes were as blank as the rain under the night sky. I don't know, she said softly, her voice simple and confused. She really didn't know. For 3 years, she had never thought about this question. She just instinctively persisted and didn't want to give up. Yi Dongxing looked at Wang Yuetong with complicated eyes and said softly, since you don't know, why are you still persisting? Wang Yuetong suddenly laughed. It seemed to be the first time for her to smile in a long time. In a trance, she seemed to have returned to her former state, pure, lively, and enchanting. She tidied the short hair on her forehead and said softly, I just want my father to admit that only my persistence over the years is right. The man I like is the most right. She looked at Yi Dongsheng and continued, Uncle Yi, if the contradictions and hidden dangers of the Wang family of Beihai really break out completely, and my father and brother can't suppress it, only he has the ability to solve everything as long as he can grow up. He does have the ability. Yi Dongxing's voice was cold and straightforward. But does he have a position? I am his position. Wang Yuetong said calmly, my man, whether he is an ambitious or a heavenly son, will be affectionate. I believe that. How could he become a heavenly son without affection? Wang Tianzong himself didn't seem to notice this. But Wang Yuetong always believed it. She believed that she was right. I want to ask for leave. Wang Yuetong looked at Yi Dongsheng and said softly. This was not the first time she had asked for leave. Since the first day Li Tianlan returned to Huiting, she had written a leave request report to her leader. However, her report was conveyed to the leader level by level and finally reached Yi Dongxing's desk. Yi Dongxing didn't approve it. Wang Yuetong didn't move. Because she knew very well that if the leave was not approved, she couldn't leave Yuzhou. Yi Dongsheng was silent for a long time. Just when Wang Yuetong's heart became cold again, he finally nodded. Yes, Yi Dongxing said. Wang Yuetong froze in place for a while, looking at Yi Dongsheng in a daze and didn't speak. You can go to Huiting and see Li Tianlan. Yi Dongsheng lowered his eyelids, hiding all his eyes. Wang Yuetong suddenly panicked. 3 years. So many struggles, so many thoughts, so many tortures. Wang Yuetong never doubted her feelings, nor did she escape her lovesickness. Now Li Tianlan was in Huiting. She was in Yuzhou. She had a holiday. As long as she wanted, she could see the man she yearned for day and night in a few hours. But at this moment, Wang Yuetong's heart suddenly panicked. The positions of the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family suddenly became extremely sharp and clear. The scenes when they parted also began to reappear in her mind. Wang Yuetong was a little scared. She wanted to see Li Tianlan, but she didn't dare. She wanted to go to Huiting, but she needed a reason. Yi Dongsheng took out an invitation and handed it to Wang Yuetong. This is an invitation for you. An invitation from Jianghu. Tomorrow night, he will hold a banquet on the Huangpu River. It's a summit meeting of the young generation. Li Tianlan will go. Wang Yuetong's breathing suddenly quickened. She suddenly felt grateful to Jianghu. Because this invitation card was the reason she needed the most. She took the invitation with trembling hands, suddenly bowed deeply to Yi Dongsheng, and ran directly to the door. She staggered, not wanting to wait any longer. Your father asked me to tell you something. Yi Dongxing's voice sounded behind her, clear and steady. Don't think too lowly of yourself. At least in his heart, you are nobler than anyone else. Wang Yuetong's figure was slightly stiff. She thought of the increasingly poor father-daughter relationship with her father in the past few years. Wang Yuetong's heart ached, and she directly rushed out of Nanqing Temple. Li Tianlan stayed in the Sky Academy for nearly a week. He didn't return to the director's compound in Wudongnu area until Li Beitian, Su Chu, and Ning Chenqing's injuries stabilized. Dongqing Rushi had been living here. Zhou Yuanshan had returned to Zhongyuan. Dongqing Qiuqi was still working and hadn't gotten off work. So when Li Tianlan came back, only Dongqing Rushi and the Golden Retriever were sitting in the living room. Dongqing Rushi was reading a book. The Golden Retriever was quietly lying at her feet, staring at the cartoon on TV. No one knew what it was observing. Seeing Li Tianlan come back, the Golden Retriever directly rushed over and hung on Li Tianlan. Dongqing Rushi also seemed a little happy. "You're back." Li Tianlan nodded, caressed the Golden Retriever's head, and put it on the ground. He said, "The first group of elites of the Deep Sea Academy has already arrived at the Sky Academy." "I heard about it." Dongqing Rushi poured a glass of water for Li Tianlan. Her eyelashes fluttered gently, and her bright eyes sparkled with a little smile. She was a little shy, a little proud, and a little clear and soft. "You seriously injured Xianxia and defeated Xianxia. You're very powerful." Dongqing Rushi's voice was clear, and she said honestly, "I can't defeat Xianxia." "Xianxia is indeed very powerful." Li Tianlan nodded. Xianxia was actually not difficult to deal with in a normal state. But once she went all out with the martial arts elites of the Wang family of Beihai, the combat capability that erupted in an instant was almost unrivaled in the thunder-shocking realm. Although Li Tianlan defeated her, he would not belittle her. Dongqing Rushi sat next to Li Tianlan and naturally grabbed one of his hands and put it on her leg. Dongqing Rushi changed into a tight white jumpsuit today. Li Tianlan's palm could clearly feel the warmth and elasticity of her thigh through a thin layer of cloth. His heart jumped uncontrollably, and then he said as if nothing had happened, "When are we going to meet them? We can go to the maneuver one day in advance." "I'll be with you," Dongqing Rushi said honestly. Li Tianlan thought for a moment. "Then shall we go to East Emperor Palace?" Dongqing Rushi's eyes lit up. Before she could speak, the phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Rushi picked up the phone, looked at it, and said softly, "It's father." "You answer it." "You answer it." Li Tianlan shook his head. The enthusiasm of the Dongqing clan always made him feel that he could not bear it. But after that night, Li Tianlan felt that there was less and less room for him to dodge. He subconsciously looked at Dongqing Rushi's small mouth. Red, full, gentle. It was a little jerky, but very flexible. Li Tianlan's body felt hot. He picked up the water glass in front of him and took a big sip. Dongqing Rushi felt Li Tianlan's gaze. She blushed, picked up the phone, and called Dad. "Rushi, are you with Tianlan?" Dongqing Wudi's voice was very soft. Dongqing Rushi said obediently, "He's watching cartoons next to me." Li Tianlan looked at the two funny bears on TV with a helpless face. Dongqing Wudi smiled with some relief. "Well, it's good to be together. You should get to know each other more." Dongqing Rushi said, "Dad, what happened?" Dongqing Wudi was silent for a while, and then said slowly, "Nothing, but in the final maneuver a month later, you should join East Emperor Palace. Tianlan has few helpers now." "Okay." Dongqing Rushi nodded without hesitation. "I'll discuss it with him." Dongqing Wudi smiled and hung up the phone. "What's wrong?" Li Tianlan asked subconsciously, but when he turned his head, his eyes fell on Dongqing Rushi's small mouth instinctively. Dongqing Rushi couldn't bear it. When she thought of what happened that night, she suddenly became a little ashamed and angry. "What are you looking at?" Li Tianlan also felt that he was very wretched. He coughed awkwardly and said, "Nothing." "What did the marshal say?" Dongqing Rushi hesitated and finally shook her head. "Nothing, just chatting." She finally decided to do it herself. Li Tianlan felt embarrassed and didn't ask more. Dongqing Rushi suddenly leaned over and kissed him on the face, then sat next to him. Li Tianlan's body trembled, and he subconsciously glanced at her. Your heart is beating fast, and your eyes are strange. Dongqing Rushi bit her lip. It's daytime now. Night. Li Tianlan's mind went blank, and the heat in his body almost made him lose his mind. He gasped a few times, suddenly reached out, lifted Dongqing Rushi's chin, and looked at her small mouth and was about to kiss it. A burst of cold killing intent burst out from Dongqing Rushi in an instant. Li Tianlan froze and subconsciously loosened his palm. The clarity in Dongqing Rushi's eyes gradually disappeared, and she became confused, but the killing intent was getting stronger and stronger. There was a flash of thought in her eyes. Li Tianlan's face changed, and he narrowed his eyes. Now the one who woke up in Dongqing Rushi's body was undoubtedly Dongqing Yueshan. Dongqing Yueshan, whose eyes were a little confused, suddenly changed her face, and her beautiful face suddenly became red. She seemed to think of something, and her eyes suddenly became cold. That night, which made Dongqing Rushi extremely ashamed and angry, was completely an unbearable humiliation for her. What made her especially unbearable was the end of that night. Whether it was intentional or not, Li Tianlan actually got it on her face. Dongqing Yueshan's eyes suddenly became incomparably cold. She stared at Li Tianlan, and her delicate body couldn't stop trembling. How dare you blaspheme me? She looked at Li Tianlan with a face full of disbelief. Blaspheme. Just one word was enough to show how arrogant Dongqing Yueshan was. I'm just spoiling my fiancé. Chapter 308. At the beginning of July. It was raining heavily in Huiting. The messy rain fell from early morning to evening, and it didn't stop at all. Instead, it got heavier and heavier. The banquet on the Huangpu River, known as the Summit of the Young Generation, was not cancelled. Xianxia, who had already arrived in Huiting, reiterated the starting time of the banquet. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Yueshan set off an hour earlier and were close to their destination when the banquet was about to begin. The gloomy sky gradually became dark in the pouring rain. The raindrops hit the car window, and the wipers danced lightly on the windshield, bringing with them patches of water. Dongqing Yueshan drove the car expressionlessly, looking straight ahead. When the two personalities alternated on her, if she didn't disguise herself, she would have two completely different temperaments. Dongqing Rushi was beautiful and innocent, well-behaved and elegant, silly and adorable, like a clear spring without impurities. It was crystal clear. Dongqing Yueshan never hid her indifference. It was a kind of indifference that rejected the whole world, with too many complicated melancholy and quietness. The same body. But the two personalities represented two completely different wills. I remember when you were in Heaven Capital, you said that even when Rushi appeared, you could feel everything that happened outside. Li Tianlan sat in the passenger seat and suddenly said. After Dongqing Yueshan appeared in place of Dongqing Rushi, the two didn't fight in the council yard. On the contrary, Dongqing Yueshan seemed to swallow everything. Dongqing Qiuqi didn't go back last night. When the two were alone, they even slept in different rooms last night, not to mention any erotic contact. Li Tianlan could feel that Dongqing Yueshan seemed to be trying hard to suppress her emotions, but intentionally or unintentionally, she still clearly revealed her disgust for him. But she still didn't make a move. Li Tianlan knew it was not a good thing. When Dongqing Yueshan's attitude was so clear, she didn't make a move, which could only mean that she was still waiting for an opportunity. Just like the lovesickness under the thunder in Heaven Capital. I'm meditating. Otherwise, how can our strength improve so fast? If not, how can you desecrate my body, you bastard? You actually got it on my face, you. Dongqing Yueshan's face turned red, and her black and white eyes stared at Li Tianlan fiercely. You hate me. Li Tianlan said calmly. The anger on Dongqing Yueshan's beautiful face suddenly froze. Then she turned her head fiercely, gritted her teeth and said, No, but I don't like you either. I can understand. Li Tianlan nodded. It was easy to accept that there was a sub-personality behind the main personality that was obedient to him. But Rushi is my fiancé. I don't think that level of contact is too much. She is your fiancé, and so am I. Dongqing Yueshan sneered and said, But are you going to fulfill the engagement? If you're willing to marry me, I'll let you do whatever you want to me. I can even accept more extreme things. But are you willing? Li Tianlan suddenly fell silent. Look. Dongqing Yueshan sneered. Her crisp voice became a bit sharp, but it was still pleasant. You just want to play with us. You're tired of playing with Dongqing Rushi's personality, so you come to play with me. After you're tired of me, you just leave? Why should I accept you? Rushi doesn't care if you have other women, but I do. Do you want to have sex with me? Sure, as long as you draw a line with that woman in samsara, you can have me at any time. Otherwise, don't even think about touching me. Li Tianlan couldn't give an answer. No answer. In Dongqing Yueshan's heart, it was already an answer. She sneered and also fell silent. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette. When he was fumbling for a lighter, Dongqing Yueshan had already thrown a silver metal lighter to him. Li Tianlan froze for a moment and said thank you. Rushi went out to buy it a few days ago. No need to thank me. Dongqing Yueshan said coldly. Li Tianlan smoked silently and didn't speak. The atmosphere in the car was getting more and more depressing. After a while, Dongqing Yueshan finally couldn't help sighing and said, Li Tianlan, what do you dislike about us? Do you want all of us in the Dongqing clan to kneel in front of you before you'll marry us? No. Li Tianlan's heart twitched fiercely. He took a deep drag on the cigarette and said softly, the Dongqing clan is very good. I mean it. If the Li family was still at its peak, it would be okay for you to do this. But now that the Li family is in such a situation, you are still willing to treat me like this. I believe that no one can do this except the Dongqing clan. I am very grateful and touched. Then you, Dongqing Yueshan, who had calmed down a little, was a little confused. You should have a good ending. Li Tianlan said slowly, instead of following me to the unknown. If I marry you, I will tie the Dongqing clan to my side. You know the opponent I will face. If I win, the Dongqing clan will not benefit, at least not much. But if I lose, the entire Dongqing clan may be dragged into the abyss by me. Marriage may not have such a strong constraint, but once I accept the marriage, I will get the full support of the Dongqing clan. Li Tianlan's smile was a little bitter. At this moment, all the members of the Dongqing clan became clear in his mind. The kind and hearty Dongqing Hongguang. The silent but powerful Dongqing Wudi. The affectionate and gentle Bai Qing Qian. The gentle and affable Dongqing Qiuqi. The lovely and beautiful Dongqing Rushi. They should have a good ending. To be honest, I'm afraid that I can't afford such support. This kind of affection is too heavy, so heavy that I feel like a sinner. Li Tianlan took a deep drag on the cigarette and murmured again, you should have a good ending. Dongqing Yueshan's fingers trembled quietly, and she suddenly grasped the steering wheel. Her face was a little pale, and her eyes looking at Li Tianlan were all complicated. Is that why you won't marry us? Dongqing Yueshan said softly. There's another reason. Li Tianlan threw away the cigarette butt and looked at Dongqing Yueshan. His eyes were deep and distant. In Heaven Capital, it was you most of the time, wasn't it? He looked at Dongqing Yueshan's evasive eyes and said blandly, that night, why did you want to kill me? I dare not accept the affection of the Dongqing clan. I can't marry you. I also can't marry a woman who wants to kill me at any time. I dare not marry you. Li Tianlan looked at Dongqing Yueshan, and his expression was very sincere. I'm very curious. Is it because of our engagement that you want to kill me? I didn't want to kill you. Are you still angry? Dongqing Yueshan bit her lip and looked at Li Tianlan carefully. Her eyes were as clear as water. Li Tianlan's heart instantly sank. Kiss me. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Her face was red, and her eyes were bright, and she was a little happy. She slowed down the car, hesitated, and leaned over to kiss Li Tianlan gently on the face. Are you done? She looked at Li Tianlan and asked. Yes. Li Tianlan took a deep look at her, and his smile was slightly bitter. He could be sure that at this moment, the person sitting next to him was Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Yueshan's personality finally chose to escape. It was a stormy day. Jianghu calmly showed his privilege. The #1 pier of Binshan Road was completely blocked, leaving only a special passage for people to enter. A 5-story white luxury cruise ship was quietly parked, and the cruise ship was brightly lit. When Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi entered the pier, there were still 10 minutes before the banquet officially began. There were already many figures moving back and forth on the top deck. The lights shone on the crowd, and it became extremely clear in Li Tianlan's sight. The heavy rain fell wildly from the sky. The space on the 5th floor was not blocked at all, but at this time, everywhere was dry, without a trace of moisture. This was the summit meeting of the young generation. Tonight, those who were perfunctory were at least young experts who had entered the fire-flaming realm. The heavy rain had completely evaporated before it fell. In the storm, dozens of fire-flaming realm experts stood there, and the space within 100 meters around the entire cruise ship was dry, without a single drop of rain, let alone on the deck of the 5th floor. Li Tianlan didn't see Jiang Shangyu. He didn't see Gu Hanzhan. But he saw Wang Xiangxiao. At this time, Wang Xiangxiao was standing in front of the railing with Xianxia, chatting with several young experts around him. Xianxia, who was gorgeous and almost flamboyant, still looked pale, but she was extremely energetic. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly froze. In an instant, Wang Xiangxiao's eyes swept over. Li Tianlan, Wang Xiangxiao, Xianxia, Dongqing Rushi. 4 pairs of eyes directly collided in the air. There seemed to be a strange and suffocating atmosphere spreading throughout the cruise ship. Li Tianlan looked at Wang Xiangxiao calmly. Wang Xiangxiao's cold eyes with killing intent gradually faded. Finally, he smiled brightly and waved at Li Tianlan. "Let's go." Li Tianlan boarded the cruise ship. Dongqing Rushi obediently took Li Tianlan's arm. Today, she wore a long white dress, elegant, quiet, and beautiful like a fairy. The two walked side by side onto the cruise ship and went straight to the top floor. More and more people knew that Li Tianlan had boarded the cruise ship. Under everyone's different gazes, Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi went straight to the 5th floor. The two figures appeared at the top of the stairs. Everyone had different looks in their eyes. On the other side, Jiang Shangyu and Gu Hanzhan had already walked over. Wang Xiangxiao and Song Ci directly approached Li Tianlan. Most of the young experts with lower levels of martial arts were looking at Dongqing Rushi's hand holding Li Tianlan's arm, because this hand represented the attitude of the Dongqing clan. But the real top experts were looking at Li Tianlan. Wang Xiangxiao's eyebrows twitched a few times. Gu Hanzhan, who came over, raised his eyebrows slightly. Jiang Shangyu's eyes became deeper and deeper. The sword strike that Li Tianlan hit Gu Yunxia hard. The battle between him and Song Ci had already become a video and spread all over Zhengzhou state. Several top young experts vaguely felt that there was something wrong with Li Tianlan in the battle state. But Li Tianlan, who appeared in front of them now, was normal and there was nothing wrong with him. No one knew what was going on, but at least no one would think that it was a problem with the video. Li Tianlan's eyes were looking at Song Ci, at her pale face. "You recover quickly." Li Tianlan smiled and said blandly. He could roughly know Song Ci's injury. Under normal circumstances, Song Ci didn't even have the ability to get out of bed, let alone appear here. With her injury, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to recover her combat capability within a month. But now, although she was still injured, her injury was almost healed. This kind of recovery speed was not in line with common sense at all. "I've always been in good health." Song Ci took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said blandly, "I'll remember that sword strike. Next time, I won't let you succeed so easily." "Really?" Li Tianlan said blandly. "Do you think you still have a chance? As I said, I've always been in good health. I'll see you in the maneuver a month later." Song Ci's tone was cold. Li Tianlan smiled and nodded, saying, "Your body is really good, and your vitality is even stronger." Song Ci's face changed slightly, and she snorted, "In terms of physical strength, I'm at least stronger than you." Li Tianlan's smile froze. He narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Seeing his expression, Song Ci and Wang Xiangxiao's eyes lit up almost at the same time. "I haven't seen you for 3 years, Your Highness. Welcome to Qingshan, Your Highness." A clear laugh sounded behind Li Tianlan. Jiang Shangyu strode over. Li Tianlan turned to look at Jiang Shangyu. It was true that they hadn't seen each other for 3 years. The last time they met, Li Tianlan personally sent Jiang Shangyu out of Heaven Capital. He almost died in the dense forest of Heaven Capital. This could be said to be a life-and-death feud. But Jiang Shangyu seemed to have forgotten this. His eyes were calm, And his smile was only sincere. And he still called him Your Highness. Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with him, saying with a chuckle, "You seem to have had a good time these 3 years?" "Not bad. Comfortable. I'm too far behind you, so I don't want to compete with you," Xianxia said with a smile. Li Tianlan took a serious look at him, a little surprised and a little vigilant. 3 years ago, Xianxia was already at the peak of the fire-flaming realm, and even a half-step to the thunder-shocking realm. But today, 3 years later, Xianxia was still a half-step to the thunder-shocking realm. His martial arts realm seemed unchanged. But vaguely, Li Tianlan felt that Xianxia was stronger than Song Ci, who was at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. "You're modest," Li Tianlan said calmly. Gu Hanshan had come over. Li Tianlan turned around calmly. At the same time, the last guest of the party climbed the stairs of the 5th floor alone. Li Tianlan suddenly froze. The last guest, who seemed to be looking for something on the cruise ship, also froze in place. She was wearing a red off-the-shoulder dress, which made her skin look even fairer and more tender. She was wearing a pair of strappy high heels, and her tall figure seemed to be prouder. Her neat and capable short hair. Her beautiful face with some persistence and stubbornness. Li Tianlan's eyes drifted in a trance. Wang Yuetong. He didn't expect to see Wang Yuetong tonight. And it was Wang Yuetong, who was like a different person from 3 years ago. Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. The top floor of the cruise ship seemed to be quiet. Zhang Xiangyu's expression didn't change, but a vague light flashed in his eyes. Under everyone's gaze, Wang Yuetong took a few steps forward on her own initiative. She walked up to Li Tianlan, and her watery eyes quickly glanced at Dongqing Rushi, who was holding Li Tianlan's arm. Then she took the initiative to speak softly. "Senior brother Tianlan, are you okay?" Li Tianlan opened his mouth. His voice was dry, but he was extremely calm. "I'm fine. How about you?" "I'm not okay." You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.